It has been over 10 years since we were first introduced to the Dying Light franchise. Since then, we've been gifted with 4 games, 2 books, a comic, and other related media. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look back and following the story of Dying Light from the initial outbreak in Harran all the way to the re-emergence of the GRE in Castor Woods. I'll also be sharing a couple of my hopes and predictions for what this storied franchise might have in store for us next. If you watched my previous video prior to the Beast and just want the update, there will be timestamps in this video and in the description box below. Like last time, links to the City of Harran website and GRE website will also be in the description box if you would like to check them out for yourself. For now, let's go back to before it all started, when the world's eyes were fixed on an international games tournament taking place in a city known as Harran. In the lead up to the 2014 Global Athletic Games in Harran, a new virus was starting to spread. 3 weeks before what would become known as the Global Athletic Games disaster, Dr. Kaleem Abbas saw a young boy in his clinic with a bite mark on his leg. The child's mother told the doctor that her son had come home from school unwell, saying a strange-acting beggar had bitten him. The child had a fever of 104 when examined by Dr. Abbas, who initially believed him to have a stomach bug and sent him home. The doctor reported the bite to the chief of police 3 days later, and in turn was told of 3 other incidences of people behaving strangely and violently. 2 weeks before disaster, Dr. Abbas went to the weekly games planning meeting, which was attended by President Hamid, though the chief of police was notably missing. Dr. Abbas attempted to alert the president to the potential medical emergency in the city. The president, though, dismissed his concerns, saying in no uncertain terms that the games would proceed as planned. The following day, 4 more people attended Dr. Abbas's clinic with the same symptoms as the bitten child, including one who reported being bitten the night before. That afternoon, the bitten child was brought back to the clinic in a violent state after biting his uncle. While in the examination room, the child also bit his mother before fleeing the clinic and disappearing into the streets. The report of violent incidences across the city increased over the next week. Dr. Abbas continued seeing patients and collected blood samples, which he intended to send out of the city. On the way to post the samples, however, he heard a chorus of moans coming from a school, and believing that the sick had clustered there, Dr. Abbas entered. That night, the parkour race of the Global Athletic Games was held in a stadium with a crowd of 25,000 people. The virus hit the stadium with the infected among the crowd, and was televised to an international audience in the coverage of the games. The government was no longer able to conceal or contain what was happening in their city. Within a further 2 weeks, Harran was completely overrun by the infected and sealed off from the outside world. The military and the police failed to stop the outbreak, and after attempts to rescue survivors resulted in the rescue teams themselves becoming infected, the remaining survivors were left to fend for themselves. The Global Relief Effort, or GRE, had in those 2 weeks been able to develop antizin, the anti-zombie injection, initially handing it out at medical centers inside Harran, and then by way of airdrops after control of the city was lost. In the 2 months following the outbreak, the airdrops continued, though the Ministry of Defense was putting together a plan to wipe out the virus and the city for good. Inside the walled city, Colonel Kadir Suleiman had been installed as acting governor to maintain order. He had a deal with the GRE to evacuate his paraplegic brother Hassan, but the evacuation didn't come, and Hassan became infected and died. Suleiman blamed the GRE for Hassan's death. He stole a highly sensitive file as a bargaining chip against the GRE, leaving it with an unknown associate, along with instructions for it to be publicized if anything happened to him. The GRE needed to recover the file before the ministry proceeded with their plan for the city. To recover the file, the GRE sends their operative Kyle Crane into Harran. Crane is briefed on the way to Harran and told that the file contains an incomplete process of synthesizing the cure, but that if implemented in its current state, the substance it produced may be extremely toxic. The GRE has instituted a citywide communications jam to prevent Suleiman's associate from publicizing the file. Only Crane's GRE-issued radio will be able to cut through. Crane is also told that Suleiman now uses a pseudonym and is believed to be leading one of the 2 main factions in the city. Crane parachutes into the city, but his chute catches on a building and he is forced to take it off, injuring himself in the fall. When Crane looks up, he sees 3 men, with the leader saying to break his legs and take him to rise. Crane pulls a gun, but is beaten to the ground. He is able to shoot one of the men, but the noise draws the infected. Crane is unable to get to his feet before the first of the infected bites into his arm. Crane is rescued by 2 survivors, Amir and Jade, though after they pull him into a building, Amir is taken down by more infected. Jade leads Crane away, radioing back to the tower, telling them to get sickbay ready. Crane passes out and wakes to the sound of children. The kids run as Crane comes around, fearing he is a zombie. Crane finds himself in an apartment, and when he leaves, sees the children again, along with a guard who says he has been asleep for 3 days. This guard tells Crane to head to room 190 to see the boss for a briefing. Crane goes looking for the boss and instead finds Rahim on the balcony of room 190. Rahim explains that this is the tower, a group of survivors scavenging, taking airdrops, and rescuing people. He also tells Crane that Jade had managed to salvage his radio, and when Crane insists on it being returned to him, Rahim does so, but is angry that Crane won't share his gear with them after they saved him, saying they've lost contact with one of their men on the 13th floor due to the crappy radios they have. Rahim then tells Crane to get out and find a way to be useful, and that a man named Brecken is the boss around here. Crane decides to make himself useful by going to look for the missing guy on the 13th floor, and finds it to be a blood-soaked nightmare. The GRE contact Crane asking for a report. Crane reassures them, saying his cover is intact, and he has yet to confirm the identity of the tower's leader. Crane also reports his infection, and his handler tells him that he better get some antizin ASAP. Crane ends the call upon hearing a survivor calling for help. He goes looking, and after killing a zombie who was trying to bash the door down, finds Mark. Mark is not too happy the zombie was killed, saying that it was his brother, who he had come down to see. Mark had cut his arm getting away from his brother, so Crane calls it in, and Rahim tells him he is sending Lena down to them. While waiting, Crane found some gauze and alcohol to help stop the bleeding. Lena then arrives and takes over from Crane, who heads back up to level 19 to speak with Rahim. They are quickly interrupted by Jade, who is upset about Rahim's plan to use explosive charges. Their conversation reveals that Jade is Rahim's sister, and when Crane thanks her for saving him, she asks that in return, he keep Rahim safe. After Jade leaves, Crane asks if he can speak with Brecken, but Rahim tells him to get changed first into something which fits what Brecken wants him to do. Rahim tells Crane that he has been assigned to room 194, and to call him once he is changed. Crane complies and returns to his room, changing into some fresh clothes. He then calls Rahim, who tells him to go to the gym on the top floor. Crane makes his way to the roof, and Rahim moves a construction crane for him to cross to another building. Rahim is waiting for him there and tells him to follow him in jumping down off the crane. Crane is freaked, but does as Rahim says, surviving the fall by landing on some garbage. Rahim then tests Crane's parkour skills, making him follow a route through the building and back to the crane. As Crane makes his way back along the crane, he experiences his first virus-induced seizure. He manages to make it back to Rahim, who tells him he needs to see Dr. Zera to get checked out and receive a dose of antizin. Rahim also tells Crane to visit the quartermaster first to get geared up. Crane makes his way to the ground level of the tower, where the quartermaster gives him a bat and tells him that right now people in the tower don't think much of Crane, though if Crane was to bring him some supplies from the airdrops or help folks out, this will change. Appropriately kitted up, Crane leaves the tower and Rahim gives him directions to Dr. Zera's trailer. Crane is able to get to the trailer without too much trouble, and the doctor gives him a shot of antizin, telling him that it just postpones the inevitable and there is no cure to the virus. Dr. Zera believes that with the help of a colleague, Dr. Camden, he will be able to create a cure. Dr. Camden, though, is stuck in Sector 0, where the outbreak started, and radio communication between them is sporadic. Dr. Zera also mentions that he has been running tests on antizin and infected tissue. He had injected recombined versions of the virus into chunks of meat and left them around the city, hoping that some of the infected would eat them, and that he could examine the results. But so far, this experiment has borne no fruit. After receiving the shot, Rahim directs Crane to speak with Spike for his first job. This job involves arming traps around an area that an airdrop will be made that evening, so that Brecken and his team are able to make it to the airdrop safely. As Crane arms the first trap, Jade calls for anyone outside to help one of the runners secure a safe house for Brecken's mission. Crane goes to the safe house and after putting down 2 zombies, finds the runner. He has been infected and has already turned. Crane gives him mercy and then finishes the job of setting up the safe house. As he does so, he gets a signal from the GRE and makes his way to the roof to contact them. Crane reports about his meeting with Dr. Zera and is given a secondary objective of securing Dr. Zera's research while maintaining his cover. Crane also reports to Jade that the safe house is active and is given the location of more safe houses to activate. First though, Crane has to set up the next couple of car traps while using firecrackers to distract the zombies. After Crane finishes setting up the last trap, a short circuit kills the power to the whole district, and Crane has to go to a nearby power station to get the power back up. With the power back online, Spike tells Crane that he needs to get to a safe zone, and that he will need to spend the night there. Making it to the safe zone, Crane sees a zombie covered in green blisters. It takes off when it sees Crane, and Crane contacts Dr. Zera to ask about it. The doctor doesn't know what it was, and asks Crane to tell him if he sees another one. With nothing to do but wait for dawn, Crane bunkers down in the safe house for the night. Crane wakes the next morning to Spike calling him over the radio, saying something terrible has happened, and to come see him. When Crane does so, Spike gives him a UV flashlight and remote control, telling Crane that if he sees a volatile, he should shine the UV into his face, and then lead him to a trap. Spike also tells Crane that despite his best efforts, Brecken's mission failed. Brecken is alive, but all scouts, including Crane, need to return to the tower. Before returning to the tower though, Crane makes his way to a rooftop to report back into the GRE. They instruct him to confirm Brecken's identity and report back immediately. As Crane goes to room 190, Jade stops him, saying that Brecken lost the rest of his team to biters, and that Rise's men then ambushed him, beating him to a pulp and stealing the airdrop. Brecken wants to go after the next airdrop himself, but Jade says they can't let him do this, and asks Crane to back her up. Inside 190, Brecken is being treated by Lena. Crane volunteers to go after the drop in Brecken's place, and Jade convinces Brecken to let Crane do it, and tells Crane to go to the cauldron and she'll contact him when he gets there. Lena is waiting for Crane outside of room 190, and tells him that Brecken was hurt worse than he wants people to know. He took a blow to the head and is having seizures, and Lena doesn't have the Loratrax needed to treat him. Lena asks Crane to get some Loratrax from a man in the city, whose mother had epilepsy. Leaving the tower, Crane reports to the GRE that Brecken is not Suleiman. He tells the GRE that the most likely suspect to be Suleiman is Rise. Crane also reports that he's been tasked to pick up the Anderson drop, and the GRE instruct him to contact them as soon as he gets the Anderson. Crane makes it to the cauldron and Jade contacts him over the radio, telling him that 3/4 of airdrops land in the cauldron, so starting from there will give him the best shot of getting to the drop before Rise's men. As Crane searches a crate, he sees a plane coming overhead and making 2 airdrops. Crane makes his way to the first airdrop but sees that Rise's men got there first. Jade urges him not to fight them, but just to head to the second drop instead. Crane does so, but sunset is fast approaching. Jade tells him it's getting too late and he should head back, but Crane insists on pushing on. He makes it to the airdrop just as the sun sets. Opening the crate, he finds the Anderson and reports it to the GRE. They tell him to destroy the Anderson in order to force an interaction between the tower and Rise, as the only other source of Anderson is the stockpile Rise has amassed. The GRE suggests that Crane become Brecken's ambassador to Rise in order to establish Rise's identity. Crane protests that there are civilians relying on the Anderson, but ultimately follows the GRE's instructions and destroys it, reporting back to Jade that there was no Anderson at the drop. Jade tells him to get back to the tower and to watch out for the volatiles. One of the volatiles spots Crane and he flees, desperately sprinting back to the tower. He makes it and goes to report to Brecken. Inside room 190, Brecken is already in discussions about buying Anderson from Rise. Jade volunteers to go to Rise, but Brecken protests. Crane interrupts, saying that he will go instead. After all, Rise has never seen his face, and it will be a clean slate. Brecken asks for the others to give him and Crane the room, and once the others leave, Brecken agrees to Crane going to Rise, asking him to see what the Anderson will cost them. Crane heads out of the tower, making his way to Rise's base and on the way being contacted by Jade, who wrongly attributes his desire to help the tower get Anderson with a sense of obligation from Amir dying to save his life. Crane approaches Rise's base, identifying himself to the guards and saying Brecken wants to make a deal. The guards let him inside, but one of Rise's men, Tahir, stops him at the entrance while Rise deals with a thief by cutting off his hand. Fortunately, even though Tahir was one of the 3 men, who attacked Crane when he landed in Harran, he doesn't recognize him. After dealing with the thief, Rise comes to speak with Crane, who immediately recognizes him as Suleiman. Rise asks what Crane offers in exchange for the Anderson, his services, his loyalty, saying that maybe he'll take both. With that, Rise walks off and Tahir tells Crane to talk to Kareem, saying that if Crane does what Kareem asks him to, then Rise will consider giving Crane's people some Anderson. Crane finds Kareem, who tasks him with climbing antenna towers and switching on shortwave radio modulators. Leaving the base, Crane once again checks in with the GRE, confirming that Rise is Suleiman. The GRE tells him to do as Rise asks, reminding him that they need that file. Crane makes his way to the first antenna, but as he goes to make his way into the building to turn on the power, an acid-spitting toad variant jumps down and attacks him. After putting this infected down, Crane switches on the power and climbs his way up to the antenna, removing a zombie at the top before opening the transmitter box. Unfortunately, it had already been scavenged for parts and is non-operational. Crane reports this to Kareem, who tells him to head to the next antenna instead. Crane makes the trek to the second antenna tower, finding it surrounded by an electrified fence. He makes his way in and finds Alexei and Christoph, who, after hearing Crane is acting for Rise, allow him to climb the tower. This transmitter is intact, and after Crane gets it online, Kareem tells him to head on back. While heading back to Rise's base, Crane is contacted by Rahim, who tells him that switching on the transmitter helped everyone, but especially Dr. Zara and Dr. Camden, who can hear each other without static for the first time ever. Crane is also contacted by Spike, who patches through Troy, a member of a group called the Embers in Sector 0. The Embers are now able to contact people outside of Sector 0 for the first time, due to the transmitters being switched on, and they are grateful. Troy tells Crane that if there is ever anything the Embers can do for him, to just ask. Returning to Rise, Crane is told that he will need to do more before Rise will give him the Anderson, but that if Crane complies with his requests, he will give Crane 2 crates of Anderson. He then sends Crane back to Kareem for his next task. Kareem tells him that this next task is to make 3 pickups from nearby settlements. Before heading to the first settlement, Crane reports into the GRE that Rise is now forcing him to extort the settlements. But the GRE just tells him to do as Rise asks and to stay close to him. At the first settlement, Crane speaks with Jafar and has to threaten him to get the money. Crane reports in to Kareem and is given the details of the next settlement at the fisherman's village and told to meet a courier in a tunnel. In the tunnel though, Crane just finds more zombies, including Crane's first ever bomber zombie variant. With the courier nowhere to be found, Kareem tells Crane to head directly to the village. When Crane arrives, he finds the village overrun. He reports this to Kareem, who directs him to clear them out. Crane then closes the gate to the village and deals with all the infected that have already made their way inside. Once all of the infected had been put down, Crane searches for the leader and tells him that the village has been cleared. With a bit more threatening, Gersel hands over the payment. Crane reports in once more and is directed to the final settlement at the ferry station. There he speaks to the leader of the settlement, who complains about the lack of protection for the protection money they are paying. Crane still takes the payment and reports in with Kareem, who tells him to come back to the base. On the way back, Crane gets a call from Brecken, who tells him that someone turned on the 18th floor, and the tower needs the Anderson immediately. Kareem also calls and directs Crane to make a detour to go after a lost patrol. Crane does as he is told and finds the patrol slaughtered. Kareem instructs him to find some blueprints they had on them, but as Crane looks, he is shot at and needs to put down the shooter before collecting the blueprints. Finally making it back to Rise's base, Crane hands off the blueprints to Kareem before heading in to speak with Rise. He turns in the payments he took from the settlements and asks for the Anderson. Rise though refuses to give him the 2 crates he promised, instead handing over only 5 vials, telling Crane that if he wants more, then in return, Rise wants Jade. Jade had been an athlete who went by the name Scorpion prior to the virus, and Rise wants to see how she fares, fighting in his pit. As Crane leaves the base, the GRE signals for him to call them, and Crane reports in again. Crane tells them that he is no longer working with Rise, due to Rise wanting Jade. The GRE, though, orders him to cooperate and hand Jade over. Crane heads back to the tower, trying to contact Bracken on the way, but not being able to raise him on the radio. He is able to contact Jade, and tells her that Rise only gave him 5 vials. Jade in turn tells him that there's been an outbreak on the 18th floor, and that he needs to get back ASAP. At the tower, he hands off the Anderson to Jade, who explains that one person turned on the 18th floor and had 2 other people trapped. They could have sealed off the apartment, but Brecken wanted to save as many people as possible. Unfortunately, this went bad, and they lost the entire floor, including children. Jade then took the Anderson to Lena as Crane went to speak with Brecken. Brecken was distraught about the loss of the people on the 18th floor, saying that he is going to speak with Rise himself, but Crane tells him to wait, and that he is going to try to find a better way. Crane heads up to the roof to contact the GRE to ask for help, but finds Raheem up there. Raheem points out a skyscraper in the distance, which contains a volatile nest. Raheem figures that if they use explosives to destroy the nest, their team will be able to go on night missions and get the Anderson. Crane discourages him though, saying they don't have near the amount of explosives required to make that happen. Leaving a dejected Raheem behind, Crane makes his way to the top of the roof to contact the GRE. He asks them to make Anderson drops near the tower, but they refuse, saying that things are a bit strained with the Ministry, making airdrops difficult. Heading back down into the tower, Crane is contacted by Jade. She tells him that Rise is using a school as a supply dump, and there may be Anderson there. She asks Crane to go with her to look. He meets her near the school, and she tells him that Tahir's men have been hauling boxes out for hours. Sneaking down closer to the school, they see Tahir executing 3 survivors before driving off. Jade and Crane split up and separately make their way into the school. Crane searches the classrooms for supplies, finding some of Rise's men. He searches through the supplies but finds no Anderson. Over the radio, Jade tells him to come down to the basement. Crane grabs the basement key and makes his way down, finding Jade with more of Rise's supplies. Opening the crate, they find plastic explosives. They then hear more of Rise's men coming, and Crane sends Jade back to the tower, telling her that he will deal with them. With Jade gone, Crane fights his way out of the school, and once outside, sees another odd green blister-coloured zombie, though it again runs off when it sees him. Crane returns to the tower, and on the way, Jade tells him that she is giving the explosive to Saeed, and that Crane should talk to Raheem and make sure that he stays away from the volatile hive. At the tower, Raheem is excited about the explosives, but Crane tells him that when the hive gets blown, Crane will do it alone. Raheem is disappointed but ultimately agrees, and also tells Crane that Dr. Zera is in the sickbay visiting Lena. Crane stops by the sickbay to ask Dr. Zera about the weird infected. Dr. Zera says that they're called bolters, and asks Crane to get a sample of bolter flesh. He tells Crane the quartermaster will be able to point him to the areas the bolters roam. Sure enough, the quartermaster gives him some leads, and that night, Crane is able to hunt one down. Securing a sample, Crane returns to Dr. Zera, who examines it. He finds that the sample is positive for the recombined virus, meaning that his meat experiment had some effect. Dr. Zera doesn't have the equipment to run further experiments. However, Dr. Camden does, and Crane offers to deliver the data and samples to him. Dr. Zera is grateful and says that he will contact Crane once everything is ready. As Crane leaves Dr. Zera, he receives a call from Raheem, who says that he and Omar have gone to blow up the volatile hive. Things went bad though, and they ran into trouble on the overpass. Crane rushes to save them while telling Raheem to hide in the train yard and alerting Brecken on the way. When Crane reaches the overpass, he finds Omar's body, but Raheem is not there. Crane finds him in the train yard and eliminates some zombies trying to break into the carriage he's hiding in. When Crane opens the carriage, he sees an injured Raheem, who tells him that he cut his leg. Raheem pushes the explosives towards Crane, saying that he had armed them thinking he wasn't going to make it, and they will go off in 5 minutes. Crane takes the explosives and makes his way through the sewers to get close to the building. Making his way inside, he places the explosives on weight-bearing columns on the first and second floors. Crane then flees the building before the explosives detonate. He returns to Raheem but finds that he is turned. The zombified Raheem attacks Crane, who has no choice but to break his neck. Crane then realizes that the wound on his leg wasn't a cut, but a bite. Crane returns to the tower and tells Brecken what happened. As they talk, Jade walks in, overhearing that her brother has died. She takes off and Brecken stops Crane from going after her. Suddenly, there are sounds of explosions from Dr. Zera's compound, and Brecken tells Crane to get down there and stop them from taking Dr. Zera. Crane rushes to the compound and takes on Rise's men. Once they've been dealt with, one of Dr. Zera's guards uses his dying breath to tell Crane that Dr. Zera had already been taken. Crane radios Brecken, who says that Rise's men would have taken Dr. Zera to Rise's garrison. Crane goes to the garrison and finds it is locked up tight. He needs to scale the building to find an entrance on the roof. Making it inside, Crane calls the GRE for support, but reaches the Ministry instead, who informs Crane that they have already declared Harran a Code 1 target zone. Crane informs them that Dr. Zera is close to a cure. The Ministry doubts this, but gives him 48 hours. Crane searches the building and after fighting through many of Rise's men, finally finds Dr. Zera. Dr. Zera's sole priority is making sure his research doesn't die with him. Crane tries to reassure him that he will get him out safely, and Dr. Zera says that he's already given the packages for Dr. Camden to Jade. Just then the lights cut out and Rise and his men surround them, grabbing Dr. Zera. Rise orders his men to hunt Jade down before driving his blade into Dr. Zera's leg and ordering that Crane be taken to the pit. Crane is knocked out and, sure enough, comes to in the pit. He sees Dr. Zera being held at gunpoint, and Rise berates Crane, calling him the biggest liar of them all. After Crane manages to punch Rise shoots the two men who were meant to be guarding him and knocks Crane to the ground, where he again loses consciousness. When Crane comes around again, he is alone in the pit with the infected, stripped of his possessions. After Crane eliminated the infected, another container is dropped into the arena, unleashing a demolisher. After Crane puts the demolisher and some virals down, Rise lets Crane know that he is aware of Crane's true identity as a GRE agent. Rise radios his contact Bassam and tells him to publish the file. Bassam does so right away. Rise says that Crane doesn't know what is on the file, and that the GRE don't intend to cure the virus, but to weaponize it for profit. Rise then orders his men to kill Crane, but Crane is able to overpower them and cut off Rise's hand. Crane then shoots the man guarding Dr. Zera and goes to him, but it is too late. The doctor passes from his injuries after begging Crane to save the people. Rise is infuriated and orders his able-bodied men to shoot Crane, who flees under a hail of bullets. Escaping the garrison, Crane experiences more seizures and passes out. He comes to at the pier, with Brecken telling him that he had to hide Crane there from Rise's men. Brecken also says that Jade has tried to take Dr. Zera's research to Dr. Camden, but Rise's men found Camden's lab, so he flooded it with biters and barricaded himself in the middle. Brecken tells Crane that a group called the Saviors can smuggle people into Sector 0. He also mentions that the airdrops stopped 36 hours ago. As Crane heads outside, a survivor returns his gear, sending Kareem's regards. Crane then makes his way to the Saviors. Along the way, Brecken radios to tell him that once he is in Sector 0, he should make contact with Troy, the member of the Embers who thanked Crane for switching on the transmitter. Crane makes it to the Saviors' contact, and after telling them that he was the one who took Rise's hand, the Saviors agree to give him one in turn. Crane heads to the tunnel leading out of the slums to meet the smuggler, Hassan. Hassan leads Crane part of the way to Sector 0, and then tells him to follow the marked path. As Crane follows the path, Hassan radios to warn him that he has tipped off Rise as to Crane's location, saying he didn't have a choice. Sure enough, just after this, Crane is ambushed by Rise's men. After surviving the ambush, Crane contacts Brecken and warns him that they cannot trust the Saviors. Emerging into Old Town, Crane attempts to make contact with Jade, but can't raise her on the radio. He reaches out to Troy instead and is given directions to the Embers Tower. On the way, Crane also contacts Dr. Camden, who confirms that Jade hasn't made it to him. Dr. Camden also says that he has had to barricade himself in the lab to hold off Rise's men. At the Embers Tower, Troy contacts Jade and hands the radio to Crane. Jade doesn't want to talk to him though, due to what happened to her brother, but Crane tells her and the Embers that he works for the GRE, and that the Ministry is about to firebomb the city, and is only holding off as they want Dr. Zera's research. This only makes Jade angrier, and she stops responding. Troy, though, tells Crane that Jade was at the university. Crane leaves the tower, making his way towards the university, and is contacted by Troy on the way. She tells him that one of their members, Savvy, is going to be working on a way to get through the GRE's signal jamming, while Crane is looking for Jade. At the university, Crane finds a group of survivors, who tell him that Jade left not too long ago, and left a photo of Amir for him with the message, "Not again." With no other leads, Crane leaves the university and tries to contact Jade again, to no answer. Troy, though, tells him that they've broken through the signal jamming, and that Crane needs to get back to the tower as there's something he needs to see. Now able to receive outside signals, the Embers have been able to watch the news, where it is being reported that the GRE, instead of trying to cure the virus, we're trying to weaponize it to sell to the highest bidder. The news also reports that there is no one left alive in the quarantine zone, and that the city is about to be decontaminated. The Embers have a plan to send a signal to the outside world to let the public know that there are still survivors, and hopefully prevent the city from being bombed. One of their members, Michael, is in place to put the plan into action, but is having issues with the infected in the area. Crane goes to help Michael, heading through the sewers to search for him. Michael tells Crane that the plan is to set off explosions in some of the apartments of a building in order to create a pattern which will be seen outside of Harran. The building is full of the infected, but Crane takes the explosives and makes his way up to the apartments, connecting the explosives to gas stoves. In one of the apartments, Crane comes across an infected child for the first time, whose screams call more infected. Silencing the child, Crane places the last explosive and reports to Michael, who is struggling with the infected in the basement. Michael tells Crane that if he doesn't make it, to grab the detonator and blow the place. By the time Crane makes it back downstairs, Michael is gone, and Crane grabs the detonator before leaving back through the sewers. Once clear of the building, Crane detonates the explosives, causing a sad face to be created on the building. Unfortunately, a fighter jet swiftly descends to bomb the building, destroying the Ember's symbol before anyone outside of Harran would have had the chance to see it. Jade saw it though and contacts Crane, finally ready to talk, and says that if he is really on their side, he needs to contact the GRE and get them to stop the ministry from bombing the city. The Ember's tech guy Savvy has found a way of breaking through the signal jamming to allow them to send signals out, but needs Crane and Jade's help. Jade agrees to meet Crane, but when he arrives at the meeting place, he finds only a message from Rise, telling him that he has abducted Jade and taken her to the museum. Troy gives Crane a tip about the museum curator, Tarek. Crane finds Tarek and learns of an underwater entrance to the museum. He decides to give this a try and makes the swim through the flooded sections of the museum, past many drowned infected. Making it to the museum proper, Crane finds Rise waiting for him beside a large television screen showing an unconscious Jade. Crane demands Jade's return, but Rise scolds him, telling him that he needs to make a showing of effort first. With this, Rise's men attack, and Crane has to fight his way through the museum, eliminating Rise's men as he goes. Eventually, he finds Jade, who is not looking too well. Rise appears and tells them that thanks to Crane repairing the antennas, Rise has been listening in on everything that they have said over the radios, and now that he has Dr. Zera's research, the GRE will do as he commands them. Rise indicates to Tahir, and the doors to the room open, allowing the infected to flood inside and attack Jade and Crane. After the last of the infected has been put down, Crane and Jade head for the door, but Jade collapses. Rise then tells Crane that Jade was bitten and infected hours ago. He throws Crane a single dose of Anderson, telling him that both he and Jade are about to turn, and he will need to choose which one of them will live. Crane tells Jade to take it, but she refuses, and before Crane can try to convince her, the virus in his system causes him to have vivid hallucinations, while hearing Jade talk to him about life, death, and sacrifice. By the time he comes back to himself, Jade has already injected him with the Anderson. Rise is disappointed in Crane having the choice made for him, and directs 4 of his men to kill him and Jade. Jade, though, manages to eliminate them all, but just after she takes down the last man, the virus takes her, and she starts biting the thug before turning on Crane. Crane then says his goodbyes to her, before snapping her neck, just like he did her brother. Rise then sends Tahir and more of his thugs to eliminate Crane, but Crane is able to best them all. With Tahir barely alive, Crane finds the package for Dr. Camden on the floor beside him, but it only contains the tissue samples. Tahir refuses to tell Crane where the other package is. Crane puts him down and leaves the museum, letting Troy know on the way what has happened. Troy asks him to meet her to collect an amplifier, which Savvy says will break through the signal jamming and allow them to communicate with the outside world. When Crane meets Troy, she tells him to take the amp to the highest possible place, the giant antenna on the edge of town. She also says the fastest way there is through the sewers. And so, Crane makes his way through more sewers, emerging close to the antenna. He contacts Savvy, who tells him he needs to find the keycard to the substation to power the antenna. The keycard was last with another of the Embers, who made it to one of the nearby containers before they lost contact with him. Crane searches the containers for the keycard, and eventually finds it along with the lost Ember. He uses it to enter the substation and restore power to the antenna. He then goes to the control panel at the base of the antenna and turns it on, but the cables for the elevator snap and it crashes to the ground. Crane makes the long climb to the top of the antenna, finally able to install the amplifier and get the message out to the world that there are survivors in Harran. He gets the message out just in time to stop the airstrike. As the jets turn away from the city, the GRE contacts Crane and offers him a way out. All he needs to do is bring Dr. Zera's research with him, and they will send a helicopter to extract him. Crane tells the GRE that he knows what was in the file, and that he knows they only want Dr. Zera's research in order to convince the world that the GRE really was working on a cure the whole time. He tells the GRE that if they want the research, to wait for his signal. Crane then lets Savvy know that the amplifier is installed, and Savvy directs him to a tunnel which will bring him back to Old Town. Making it through the tunnel, Crane contacts Dr. Camden and says he is on his way to him now. At the clinic, Crane eliminates some of Rice's men before being greeted over the radio by Dr. Camden, who can see him on the monitors. Camden directs Crane to take the elevator to the bottom floor. Once there, he tells Crane how to open the main door and switch on the generator. As Crane works his way through the clinic, Camden tells him about how he and Dr. Zera had been sent to study the Harran virus by the GRE and were meant to be extracted by a GRE operative like Crane, but they had been separated. Dr. Zera and the operative fell in with Brecken's crowd, while Dr. Camden found this clinic and has been working here on a cure ever since. When Crane makes it to the lab, he gives Dr. Camden Dr. Zera's tissue samples and also shows him a photo of Amir. Dr. Camden confirms that Amir was the GRE operative who had tried to extract him and Dr. Zera. Dr. Camden then asks where the second package is, and Crane tells him that he'll need to get back to him about that after confronting the GRE. Crane makes his way up to a tower to contact the GRE, but is intercepted by Rise, who dares him to come challenge him. He also tells Crane that he has made a deal with the GRE, Dr. Zera's research in exchange for a helicopter out of Harran. Rise asks Crane to just imagine the damage he could do outside of the walls of the city, unless Crane thinks he can stop him. Crane can't let Rise escape Harran with the research, and so rushes to Rise's tower to confront him. Crane returns to the slums, and after enduring a harrowing run through the volatile-infested sewer, Crane emerges at the base of Rise's tower. As he makes his way up, he finds Kareem, who reveals that Rise had betrayed his men and slaughtered them. Kareem has also been shot by Rise, and warns Crane that there are mines on the 2 floors above them. He suggests that Crane make his way through the neighbouring building instead, and Crane follows this advice. After climbing as high as he can, Crane returns to Rise's tower and is finally able to meet him on the roof. There, Rise holds Dr. Zera's research over the edge of the tower. He then throws it at Crane to distract him, following it up with a throwing knife which lodges in Crane's shoulder, causing him to drop the research. Rise kicks it out of Crane's reach and lunges at him repeatedly with a machete, until Crane is able to force the machete back into Rise's own stomach. Rise collapses and Crane pulls the machete out, contemplating killing him until Rise tells him to do it. Instead, Crane tells Rise that he will live to suffer the rest of his life in agony. Crane grabs the research just as a helicopter appears, and Rise lunges at him again, pushing him off the edge of the tower and leaving him and the research dangling above the city from a shipping container. Rise tells Crane to hand him the research, so that there is at least a chance that Harran might live. Crane throws the research up to Rise, and Rise attempts to pry Crane's hand off the cable he is holding to send him plummeting to his death. Instead, Crane pulls the knife from his shoulder and lodges it into Rise's neck, causing him to topple off the tower. Picking up the research, Crane contacts the GRE to ask what they want, and they try to convince him to give them the research in exchange for a lift out of Harran. Crane tells them no, and that he will be in contact with them once he decides what to do next. As the helicopter leaves, Dr. Camden contacts Crane and tells him that the results from the tissue samples are phenomenal, and that with the rest of Dr. Zera's research, he is sure a cure is within reach. After he took Dr. Zera's research to Dr. Camden, Carl Crane remained in Harran, helping other survivors where he could while they waited for a cure. One day, a badly injured survivor was brought to the tower, talking about a group of people in the countryside who don't get infected even if they are bitten. This survivor had a map on him with a way out of Harran. The survivor tried to warn Crane to stay away, but with the survivors running out of antizin, Crane followed the map, making his way out of the city in search of the immune. He emerged from the sewers onto the cliffs above some farmland. There, he radioed Lena to let her know that he had made it out, and she gave him the news that the survivor had died that morning of a fever. Undeterred, Crane made his way down from the cliffs and searched the farmland for other survivors who may know something about the rumors of the immune. He came across a settlement and was directed to their leader, Jazia. He finds Jazia in the midst of an argument with his daughter, Ezgi. When Ezgi stormed off, Crane spoke with Jazia, saying that he had heard of people who don't become infected when bitten. Jazia won't talk about it though, and tells Crane to just take some of the bread and go back to Harran, as no one wants him there. With Jazia uncooperative, Crane leaves the barn to look for someone else who will talk to him, and is immediately waved over by Khan. Khan had noticed that Crane had come from the city, and asked him about the survivor, who he says was named Kurt. Crane tells him that Kurt didn't make it, and asks Khan about the immune people that Kurt had mentioned. Khan says that he can't actually remember any of the locals turning, and that they belong to a cult led by some woman they call the Mother. Khan and Kurt used to work together, and now that Kurt is out of the picture, Khan needs a driver. He offers Crane information in exchange for his assistance, and suggests that Crane look for a vehicle at the nearby farm. Crane complies and finds that the farm has been overrun with bandits. After taking them out, he is able to liberate a buggy from the farm, and goes to drive it back to Khan, but finds that he is gone. Ezgi tells him that they finally ask Khan to leave. She won't say who they are, just that they did what her father should have done a long time ago. Ezgi also tells Crane that if he wants anything from them, he will need to show everyone that he is there to give, not just to take. She suggests that he start by fixing the community's water supply. 3 of their men had already tried to restore the water, but this meant going into bandit territory, and those men never made it back. Crane takes her advice and heads to the pumping station to investigate, and finds that it too is being held by bandits, who are selling water in exchange for food or cash. Crane doesn't agree to this deal, and the bandits attack, causing Crane to put them down. As he does, he hears screams from inside the pump station, and when he investigates, he finds Ali, one of the 3 missing men. After Crane frees him, Ali gets to work trying to redirect the water to the settlement. Unfortunately, the bandits close the valve, and when Ali redirects the water, the pipes start to burst. Crane follows the pipes in his buggy, racing against time to open the valve before the pipes are destroyed. He finds the other pump station and is able to open the main valve just in time. By the time that Crane returns to the settlement, the water has been restored, and Jazia is very grateful. He tells Crane that the people of the countryside are protected by their faith in the Mother. That Mother speaks only to those known as the Faceless, but maybe Crane can get the Faceless to notice him if he does enough good for the community. And so, Crane worked to improve his reputation in the community, saving survivors, wiping out volatile nests, and doing tasks for the local people. While Crane was working on his reputation, Jazia called him back to the settlement, and with him was one of the Faceless. When Crane asked the Faceless if he could speak with the Mother, the Faceless refused, saying that she won't speak with a stranger, though Crane is on the right path if he wished to join their ranks. The Faceless does give Crane a crossbow to help him in his struggle. Crane continued helping the community, and once he had done enough to be recognized as an ally, the Faceless contacted him and directed him to a temple called the Eye of the Sun. Crane made his way up to the temple and found there a chanting crowd facing a platform with docile infected. Among the crowd is Khan, who tells Crane that they had shown him the error of his ways and opened his eyes to the truth. 3 of the Faceless then appeared on the platform, holding thuribles, which emit a blue mist, leading the crowd in a chant to the Mother. The Mother herself appeared at the back of the platform as the Faceless walked through the crowd, enveloping them in the blue mist, and one of them telling Crane that the Mother thanks him for his suffering. The Faceless pull Crane onto the platform, where he finds the infected do not attack him. He hears the Mother's voice inside his head, asking him to accept her. Crane loses himself to the blue mist, and comes to outside the temple, still feeling the effects of the mist. As he descends from the temple, the acolyte contacts him, telling him that his soul and blood have been cleaned, and he will remain immune to the virus, as long as he stays on the right path. The acolyte asks Crane to put his faith in the Mother, and continue what he had started, then all of his questions will be answered. He continues to help locals to increase his standing with the Faceless, and once he reaches the status of believer, the Faceless contact him and ask him to investigate an anomaly observed in a field. Crane goes to the field and sees more of the blue mist. He finds a destroyed vehicle that appeared to be transporting military crates that now lie scattered around, some of which are empty and seem to be the source of the mist. The Faceless tell Crane to meet him at Jazia's farm. When he does, the Faceless tells him that the Mother had found a way to fight the infection, using an elixir that produces the blue mist. But this is just a bandage solution, while they work on a more permanent one. To find the solution, they need time, and for peace to last just a little while longer, but they are running out of the elixir. They want to offer Crane a deal, find more of the elixir, and a good portion of it will be his to keep, and take back to Harran with him, if he chooses to return to the city. Members of the Faceless have been out looking for an elixir, and 3 were investigating a cave before they dropped out of contact. Crane is told to go to the cave after them. On the way, Crane contacts Lena to update her, and she begs him to hurry, as they have run out of Anderson. Arriving at the cave, Crane finds more of the blue mist at the entrance. Exploring the cave, he comes across a military convoy. A distress broadcast repeats the message that the goods are undamaged, but when Crane opens the container, there is nothing there. Crane also finds the bodies of 2 of the Faceless, along with one of Rise's men. Crane radios the Faceless and lets him know what he found, warning him of Rise's men as he does. After leaving the cave, the Acolyte contacts him and asks him to check in on Attila, an ethnographer working in the mother's mansion. Crane complies and makes his way up to the mansion. There he finds Attila, and when Crane tells Attila that the mother sent him to check that he was okay, Attila says that he is not, that there will be no book, and that he is just a dying old man whose days of field research are over. Crane immediately offers to do the field research for him, as the mother really wants Attila's work to be finished. Attila, though, first asks that Crane restore power to the mansion, which he does by fixing the cables and turning the power back on. Attila then explains that he had been tasked with researching the prophecy about the god of the sun. There are 3 ancient monoliths that need to be investigated. Attila is looking for specific features, so Crane will need to go see these monoliths in person and describe them to Attila. Crane finds each of the 3 monoliths, and at each one radios back to Attila to describe them to him. After reporting on the last of the 3 monoliths, Attila tells him that he will need to climb the highest mountain he can find, to the Temple of the Sun. Reaching the summit, Crane finds another monolith, but Attila tells him to look for a mask instead. Crane finds a mask in a pit of what appears to be offerings, and Attila tells him to take it and bring it back to him. Crane returns to Attila, who tells him that the mother is obsessed with the prophecy of a man who, through an act of ultimate sacrifice, shall accept the mercy of the light, and the god of the sun shall be revealed through him, and through him will he speak. Attila then dismisses Crane, saying that he will let the Acolytes know that Crane helped him. Crane leaves Attila to his work, but is soon contacted by an Acolyte asking about him. Crane is confused, as Attila had told him that he would contact the Acolytes. In the absence of any word from Attila, the Acolyte instructs Crane to check on him once more. Crane does so and returns to the mother's mansion, but finds Attila is no longer in his study. Instead, there is a note on the door, saying that what Attila has done will give the mother a better answer to what she is looking for than any research he could do. The note also tells Crane that he knew the mother before the outbreak, when she was just Jasmine, the wife of Colonel Amir. The colonel came to evacuate Jasmine during the outbreak, but was bitten in the process. He asked Attila to stay in the countryside, and gave him a code to pass on to Jasmine, only if her state of mind after the tragedy didn't raise any concerns. But Attila never saw her again. Instead, Attila left the code for Crane, believing that Crane has the chance of meeting Jasmine, and believing that when the time comes, Crane will do the right thing. Crane finds Attila's body in the tunnel underneath the mansion. He has slit his own throat while wearing the mask Crane recovered for him. Crane reports this to the Acolyte, who tells Crane that Attila had used him and had clearly misinterpreted the prophecy and taken his own life, believing that the sun god would then possess his body. He was mistaken. The Acolyte directs Crane to take the mask and the book Attila had been writing to Jazia, saying that they will take care of the rest. Crane retrieves the mask and takes the book from Attila's study. He takes both to Jazia to pass on to the Faceless. When Crane leaves the settlement, he is contacted by the Acolyte, who tells him that a group matching the description Crane had given them of Rise's men has occupied the granary. The Acolyte believes that if they took the missing member of the Faceless from the cave, he is probably being held there. Crane goes to the granary and sure enough finds it overrun with Rise's men. After eliminating them, he finds the missing member of the Faceless, Orkan. He had been tortured by Rise's thugs, who wanted the cure, but couldn't open the case of the elixir. Orkan swears that he didn't tell them anything. With his final breath, Orkan utters the words, "Lighthouse." Crane radios back to the Acolyte to give him an update, and to let him know that he is going to check out the lighthouse. When he makes it there, he finds the lighthouse to be locked, and has to climb his way up the outside of the building to make his way inside. At the top, he finds Khan, who insists that he just lives there, and doesn't know anything about the bandits. This deception doesn't last long though, as one of the bandits immediately radios Khan, referring to him as Boss. The bandit reports that a group of them, led by Hakan, are going after the mother. The bandit also tells Khan that someone took out the granary, and they need to hunt them down and are waiting outside. Crane responds saying that there is no need, and to keep an eye on the balcony. He forces Khan outside and holds him over the railing, demanding he tell him where Hakon's group are. Khan tells him that they are going to the dam, as the priest told them the entrance is there. The bandits outside start firing missiles at Crane, but only manage to eliminate their own boss, while Crane emerges relatively unscathed. He fights the bandits in the ensuing smoke and recovers the vials of the elixir. With the bandits at the lighthouse defeated, Crane radios in a warning, letting the Faceless know that there are only a few vials remaining, and that Rise's men are on their way to the dam. The Acolyte tells Crane to get there fast, and Crane races to the dam in order to get there before the bandits. He makes it to the dam with only a couple of minutes to spare and scales the outside to the entrance. Inside the dam, Kyle immediately sees the body of one of the Faceless. He finds more bodies as he makes his way through the corridors, and he hears the mother's voice inside his head. She tells him that before the outbreak, the Children of the Sun were nothing, just a half-forgotten tradition. The title of the mother was also meaningless back then, and the mother thought their respect just came because she was a colonel's wife. After the outbreak, her husband returned to evacuate her, but they were both bitten, and the colonel bled to death in her arms. Dying, he gave her his cigarette case before she was dragged away by the Believers. Inside the cigarette case was a map, a key, and a note with numbers, which led the mother and her followers to the dam. The healthy tried to get the power back on, while the rest looked for medicine. They found a locked container, which could be opened using the numbers in the note. Inside were strange vials. The mother was about to turn and so drank the liquid in the vial, trusting that her husband had led her there for this purpose. The mother awoke after the lights were switched on, surrounded by the bodies of those that had trusted her. After telling Crane this story, the mother removed her mask, revealing that the liquid has turned her into a sentient volatile. In the light, her mind is her own, but in the darkness, her new nature dominates, mindless and lethal. The mother believes that Crane is the man the prophecy spoke of. Then shall be revealed one man, who through an act of ultimate sacrifice shall accept the mercy of the light, and the God of the sun shall be revealed through him, and through him will he speak. Crane though says he just wants the medicine to save his friends, but the mother tells him there is no medicine, just the substance that turns people into what she is now. Crane protests that they don't need to drink the elixir, just use the mist, but the mother says it doesn't matter, and that just by breathing it in, they will eventually become what she is. It just takes a bit longer. The mother says that the army built a failsafe into their experiment, and the whole region can be purified. She asks if Crane is prepared to sacrifice thousands of lives, his own among them. If Crane had agreed, and chosen this sacrifice, in exchange for wiping out the virus, then the mother would have led him to a nuclear warhead. There, Crane would have used the code Attila gave him to activate it, standing with the mother until they both found the mercy of the light. However, Crane refuses this sacrifice, determined to return to Harran with the medicine and save his people. The mother is enraged by his response and forces him to drink from one of the vials before throwing him off the balcony, saying that she will make him pay for those she could not save. Crane is forced to fight the mother, eventually tearing her head off, as she warns him that he won't be able to endure what he is turning into, and that he will kill them all. Crane takes the remaining vials and staggers out of the dam, still hearing the mother's voice in his head. He tries to contact Lena to tell her that he is coming back with the medicine, and that they'll be able to save everyone. But even as he speaks, he is starting to succumb, and when he eventually emerges from the tunnels at sunset, he sees a woman and her young children in the park. They see him and scream as he turns in the dying light, losing his mind and releasing the howl of a volatile. After the initial outbreak, the disease ravaged Harran for over 5 years before a vaccine was eventually found. However, the GRE did not cease their attempts to weaponize the virus, continuing to experiment on it in their labs. The GRE also started experimenting on children, recognizing that young children showed some natural immunity to the virus. In October 2021, a variant of the Harran virus escaped a level 4 GRE laboratory located near Geneva. This variant, known as tachytransmissive Harran virus, or THV, was a more infectious variant of the original virus. This time, there would be no containing it. No walls or force could stop its spread, and in an event known as the Fall, the whole world was lost to the virus. THV started to spread through Switzerland and France, and by December it had reached the United Kingdom. The GRE ordered the isolation of 20 affected cities, constructing walls around them, similar to what had been done to isolate Harran. One of these quarantined cities was Villador. The walls did help, but not in the way the GRE was expecting. Instead of containing the virus in the city, it protected Villador from the worst of the plague. After ravaging Europe, THV spread around the world. By June of 2022, the United States had succumbed, and the rest of the world would soon follow suit. By March of 2023, only one human city remained, Villador. The GRE and the military, along with the remaining heads of state of New Britain, France, Sweden, Russia, Italy, and Germany, created the Council of Mankind, an organization dedicated to doing whatever was necessary to ensure the survival of the human race. They would fail. The GRE, desperately searching for a solution, developed the THV GenMod chemical, designed to kill the infected and immunize the uninfected. The military under General Pratt pushed the GRE to release the THV GenMod chemical, though the head of the GRE resisted this as long as possible due to highly dangerous side effects having been discovered. On 24 June 2024, Villador experienced its first major THV outbreak. The Council of Mankind was disbanded in the wake of the outbreak, and the military took control under the leadership of General Pratt. Mutiny shortly occurred within the military ranks, and Colonel Williams took charge. On 6 January 2025, the military forced the rollout of the THV GenMod chemical, in the hope of stemming the infection in the city. It did not work. While some of the infected did appear to be eliminated by the chemical, they soon got up again, while many of the uninfected people who were exposed to the chemical turned. While the city survived, large swathes of it were rendered uninhabitable by the GHV GenMod chemical, and the city was effectively split in two, with the chemical cutting off Old Villador from the central loop, except by way of tunnels. Outside the city, the other remaining remnants of humanity spread out between settlements, and the only contact between them was the pilgrims, outcast couriers who chose to live nomadic lives and travel between settlements. One survivor of the GRE's child experiments, Aidan, became a pilgrim to track down his sister, Mia, and the man who ran the experiments on them as children, a man named Waltz. By the time of the events of Dying Light 2, Aidan had been a pilgrim for 4 years. 4 years after becoming a pilgrim, Aidan met up with Spike outside of Villador, who told him he had tracked down someone in Villador who knows Waltz. He sends Aidan to a broadcast station with directions to contact this informant at dawn. When Aidan does so, the informant tells him to come and meet him at the metro station. Unfortunately, before Aidan is able to find the informant in the metro station tunnels, he is attacked by a volatile. The informant manages to rescue him, but not before Aidan becomes infected. He quickly feels the effects of the virus and loses consciousness. When he starts to come around, he hears renegades, who are dragging the informant away. Aidan makes his way through the tunnels, as the renegades interrogate the informant for a key. He catches up to them, and after taking out the renegades, Aidan talks to the informant, who directs him to take a GRE access key from his pocket. Aidan asks him about Mia, and the informant tells him to go to the fisheye, find a girl named Lawan, and give her the key, saying that with the key and Lawan's help, Aidan will learn everything. The informant also warns Aidan that if Waltz gets his hand on the key, the whole city, everyone, will die. Aidan and the informant try to escape the tunnels, but before they have a chance, they hear Waltz calling out the informant's name, Dylan. Dylan tells Aidan to get into the vent, and then seals it behind him, telling him that Waltz can't get the key, and reminding him about the fisheye and Lawan. Dylan then gets up to intercept Waltz and the renegades. Aidan can only watch as Waltz executes Dylan against the grate. The virus surges in Aidan and he groans, alerting Waltz to his presence. Aidan has to flee, escaping the renegades and making it to Villador. He emerges into the bazaar, on the verge of turning. Recognizing that Aidan is about to turn, the people of the bazaar go to string him up, but at the last moment, a man named Hakon intervenes, dragging Aidan away, pretending that he knows him. Hakon carries him away to a friend's workshop and injects Aidan with inhibitors. Aidan pushes Hakon off him and lunges at one of the women before the other knocks him out. When Aidan comes to, he finds himself tied up. Hakon tells him that he was on the verge of turning, but the UV and inhibitors pulled him back. Hakon then cuts him free and tells him that they are going to go to a safe place. Aiden protests that he needs to go to the fisheye, but Hakon tells him he won't get near it without a biomarker, a device which monitors the progress of the disease when the host is in the dark. Hakon also knows where Aiden can get one. With only an hour left until dusk, Hakon leads Aiden out of the workshop, and Aiden sees Villador properly for the first time. Hakon points out the location of the fisheye in the central loop, but says the only way to get there is through a tunnel which is protected and almost impossible to get through. And anyway, Aiden won't be going anywhere without a biomarker. As night falls, Hakon says that they need to get to a UV light and leads Aiden to the bazaar. There, Hakon begs the bazaar guard to let them in, but he won't without Aiden having a biomarker. As Hakon continues to pound on the door, the guard turns off the UV light, giving them no choice but to run. Hakon leads Aiden to the home of his friend, Killian. Killian, though, is also not too keen on letting them in, and Aiden has to hold off the infected as Hakon tries to convince Killian to let them inside. Once Killian does, Hakon asks him about a biomarker, but Killian says he doesn't have one. Hakon comments that they'll need to go to the hospital. For now, though, he tells Aiden to stay and rest by the UV lamp. Aiden rests until Hakon radios him and tells him to come to the GRE hospital. After making their way through the hospital, Hakon finally finds a biomarker and puts it on Aiden. The biomarker immediately starts to beep, indicating Aiden's about to turn, and the two run outside into the sunlight. After they get outside, Hakon questions Aiden about what he plans to do after he finds Mia, and comments that for his own plans, he would like to live by the ocean and learn to surf, telling Aiden that the two of them should travel together. Hakon suggests that Aiden check out the notice board near the bazaar to see if there's anything there about his sister, and then leaves Aiden to his own devices, telling him he needs some time to suss things out and will be in touch. Soon enough, Hakon radios Aiden, calling him to meet on a roof near the metro station. There, Hakon points out the Peacekeepers' base in the metro station and suggests sneaking past them to get to the tunnel. Aiden asks why they can't just ask them for passage to the central loop, but Hakon tells him that right now, the Peacekeepers are hunting for the person who killed their commander, and everyone is a suspect. Hakon suggests that Aiden get some sleep, telling him they will head out at night. That night, Aiden tried to sneak through the tunnels, while Hakon distracted the guards, but was discovered by Peacekeepers and knocked out. When he comes to, a PK sergeant asks what he was doing, and Aiden explains that he was trying to get to the center. The PK assumes that Aiden is someone from the bazaar, and tells him that the tunnel is closed, until he hands over the killer of their commander, Lucas. Aiden explains that he is a pilgrim, and that when Lucas was killed, he was 100 kilometers away. The new PK commander, Aitor, believes him and dismisses the sergeant. Aitor tells him that the tunnel is closed until the killer is found, and more than that, if the bazaar continues to revolt, then the PK army is going to wipe them out. Aitor tells Aiden that Lucas had a unique weapon called the Lazarus, and asks him to keep an ear out for it, saying he will return the favor, and Aiden will be the first through the tunnel once they find their killer. Aiden is then allowed to leave the PK base and meets Hakon outside. Aiden tells him that Aitor asked him to find the Lazarus, and Hakon puts him onto a fence he knows, named Hubert. Aiden looks for Hubert at a nearby windmill, but he flees and Aiden has to chase after him. When Aiden finally catches up, Hubert says a girl named Maya tried to sell him the Lazarus in an old tenement building, but he refused to buy it. Aiden goes to the tenement building to seek out Maya, and finds that she is a young girl, and clearly not the killer. She had only taken the weapon from Lucas's body, in the hopes of being able to sell it. She gives it to Aiden, and he takes it back to Aitor. Aitor reiterates that the tunnel will stay closed until the killer is found. He sees blood on the Lazarus, commenting that the killer must have a pretty nasty gash. He asks Aiden to find the killer, saying it must be someone from the bazaar. He also lets Aiden know that whoever the killer is, they took a trophy. They cut Lucas's tattoo from his arm. Aiden meets with Hakon again and lets him know that this time Aitor asked him to find the killer. In turn, Hakon tells him about the players at the bazaar: Carl, the preacher and the man in charge, Sophie, his right-hand woman, and Dodger, a local gangster. Aiden tells Hakon that he will talk to Sophie while Hakon looks into Carl. Sophie, though, only works with people she trusts, and she doesn't know Aiden. She tells him to talk to the people of the bazaar to see if he can gain their trust. If he can, she might change her mind. Aiden heads into the bazaar again and does some tasks for the locals to earn their trust. Once he has, he returns to Sophie, who is now willing to cooperate with him. She sends him to speak with the bazaar's craft masters, Alberto and Vincenzo, and ask where they can get some pure crystals. Aiden goes to talk to the craft masters, but they tell him that Sophie's brother Barney had already asked them about the crystals. They tell Aiden the same thing they told Barney, that the crystals can be found in a nearby store. Aiden reports back to Sophie, who is angry that Barney is putting himself in danger by looking for the crystals. Aiden offers to go after him and Sophie accepts, telling him that Barney will likely wait until dusk to enter the store. That night, Aiden goes to the store and creeps past some infected. He hears Sophie's voice coming from a radio next to a body. He picks up the radio and reports in, telling Sophie that he found the body of a white, bald man. Sophie says that this is Kojak and not Barney, but Barney can't be far. Aiden follows a blood trail and he knocks on the door calling for Barney, but Barney refuses to open it, believing Aiden is there to steal the crystals. The noise of them arguing attracts more infected that Aiden puts down. With Barney still unwilling to open the door, Aiden breaks it down and tells Barney that they are leaving. Barney protests that they have to find Birdie, who led the infected away from him. Barney is in no condition to look for his friend, so Aiden goes instead, telling Barney to stay put. He follows another blood trail and finds a badly injured Birdie. Birdie asks for his radio and talks to his mother. He dies while telling his mother that he will be back soon. With Birdie dead, Aiden radios Barney to let him know what happened, but he gets Sophie instead, who tells him that Barney has already gone back to the bazaar. At the bazaar, Aiden finds Barney being treated by a doctor, Veronica, and talking about how things are better without Lucas. Aiden asks him about Lucas, but Barney wants him to keep his nose out of it. He also tells Aiden that Sophie wants to talk to him, so Aiden seeks her out. He finds her arguing with Carl, and when he asks her about it, she tells him that the bazaar's water supplies are running low, and that local thugs, Jack and Joe, took over the water tower and are extorting the bazaar, threatening to blow up the water tower if they don't receive a weekly tribute of medicines, food, and crystals. Carl intends to keep paying, but Sophie doesn't believe that the thugs will keep up their end of the deal. She asks Aiden to make sure that everything goes smoothly with the trade, by guarding the delegation from the bazaar from a discreet distance. While Aiden was making his way to the exchange point, one of the people sent by the bazaar, Susie, contacts Sophie, saying it was a trap and they are under attack. Aiden rushes over, but it is too late. Aiden takes out the bandits and finds Susie barely alive. Just before she dies, Susie manages to tell Aiden that the bandits have taken Carl. Aiden reports in to Sophie, and she tells him to search the other bodies to see if the crystals are still there. Aiden does so while dodging the infected, but everything has been taken. He radios Sophie again, who tells him to meet her near Jack and Joe's camp. Aiden meets some of Sophie's people on the roof and takes a nap while waiting for Sophie. He dreams of a hospital and trying to reach Mia in the fire. When he wakes, Sophie is there, and while they are talking, Aiden's radio hisses and he says that it just does that sometimes. Aiden then wanders away from the group to talk to Atar. Atar tells him that he is on another roof nearby and they need to talk. Aiden does as he is told and goes to meet Atar. Atar warns him that the PK are about to search Sophie's camp, and that rumours about Aiden finding the Lazarus for Atar are starting to spread. He warns Aiden that Sophie's people might suspect that Aiden is a PK spy. He also tells Aiden to let him know when the attack on Jack and Joe's camp is planned for. With that, Atar lets Aiden return to Sophie. Sophie tells him the plan to take the bandit base. Aiden will go in first, and Sophie and her people will go in from the other side, to catch them in a pincer movement. If anything goes wrong, they are to retreat to their base in the Tango Motel. As Aiden moves in to attack the base, Sophie radios him and says there has been a change of plan, as their safe house has been attacked. She tells Aiden to push on and rescue Carl. Aiden follows through on the attack on the bandit camp, and after taking down the bandit lieutenant and claiming the camp, Aiden finds Carl. With Carl free, Aiden attempts to radio Sophie, but she doesn't answer. Carl tells Aiden to go to the Tango Motel to check on them, urging him to run fast. Just as Aiden gets to the hotel though, Hakon contacts him, urging him not to waste time, and to go back to the metro and talk to Atar instead of entering the hotel. Aiden then has to make a choice about whether to enter the hotel and seek out Sophie, or return to Atar. If he does enter the hotel, he will find bodies of survivors and peacekeepers. He will search for Sophie but won't find her. Instead, when he makes it to the roof, he will hear Atar's voice, coming from a radio, trying to contact his men. Unfortunately, when Aiden picks up the radio and talks to Atar, Barney will overhear him and accuse Aiden of bringing the PKs to their base. Barney would order some of the remaining survivors to attack Aiden, and after putting them down, Aiden would attempt to re-enter the hotel, only to be attacked by Herman. By the time Herman has been dealt with, Hakon would have caught up to Aiden and would tell him to find Barney. Aiden would do so and find himself on the end of Barney's crossbow. If Aiden convinced Sophie that they could help each other, Sophie would tell him that they did not kill Lucas. Sophie would also promise to take Aiden to the Central Loop herself if he helps them take back the water tower from Jack and Joe. If Aiden chose not to enter the Tango Hotel, or at any time refused to help Sophie, he would have instead returned to the metro station and met with Aitor in his quarters. There, Aitor would ask Aiden to take the water tower for the PKs, saying it would give them massive leverage for the Bazaar to tell them who Lucas's killer was. No matter if he was acting for the survivors or the PKs, Aiden would end up going to the water tower, finding that it is rigged with explosives. Aiden would disarm all the explosives on his way up the tower. At the top, he would find Jack and Joe, and would have to decide whether to make a deal with them by agreeing to get them out of the city, or simply take them out. While talking, Jack would mention that they had warned Barney that Lucas was about to take him in on weapons charges. If Aiden agreed to help Jack and Joe leave the city, they would leave the water tower peacefully and head to the tunnel near the Tango Motel to wait for Aiden. Aiden would later find, though, that they were arrested by the PKs, ending their story in a prison cell. If Aiden did not agree to help Jack and Joe, they would attack him, and their story would end much sooner. Either way, the water tower would be Aiden's to assign to either the peacekeepers or the survivors. Aiden would be free to make whatever choice he wanted, regardless of who sent him to the water tower. After Aiden made the choice, he was contacted by Hakon, and he tells him what Jack said about Barney. Hakon suggests searching Barney's room at the hotel. When Aiden does, he discovers Lucas's tattoo and the flesh it was inked into. Aiden radios Hakon to let him know what he found, but even as Hakon is telling him to get out of there, Barney walks in. Barney denies having taken the skin or killed Lucas, and attacks Aiden. If Aiden had been siding with the Bazaar up until this point, then as they fought, Sophie would burst in, and Barney would accuse Aiden of trying to frame them. Aiden tells Sophie about the skin he found, and she also denies having anything to do with the murder. Sophie will continue to promise Aiden a way into the Central Loop, and she will tell him that there is a plan to wipe out the PKs, and that she will be in touch. Sophie will later call him to the Bazaar. There, Aiden will learn that Sophie has overthrown Carl as the leader of the Bazaar. She has a plan to drive the PKs from Old Villador. By taking out the windmill they rely on to power their UV lights. Without those lights, the infected will tear them apart, and they will be forced to withdraw. Aiden will meet with the Bazaar's craftmasters, Alberto and Vincenzo, and be told to return to the water tower to collect the disarmed explosives. When Aiden arrives at the water tower, he will learn that the PKs had already raided it, but a small group had already left with the explosives Aiden needs. Aiden will track down the lost convoy and find only one survivor, who is soon killed by a goon. Aiden fights through the infected to recover the explosives and brings them back to Alberto and Vincenzo. Alberto is concerned that the remaining explosives are not enough to take out the windmill. Vincenzo asks Aiden to get some fertilizer from Hakon's friend Killian. Killian isn't home, so Aiden breaks in and liberates the fertilizer. He is then tasked with meeting Alberto and assisting him by planting bombs on the windmill. After the windmill is destroyed, Aiden returns to Alberto to celebrate their success, but instead finds that he has been discovered by two PKs, who have mortally wounded him. It will be left to Aiden to tell Vincenzo of his father's death, and to pass on Alberto's final message, that he is proud of him. Aiden does have a choice to make now, to either keep his word to Alberto, or to meet with Hakon and make for the Central Loop while the PKs are distracted. Assuming Aiden kept his word, then by the time he returned to the Bazaar, he finds that the PKs have attacked it and taken prisoners. Aiden frees the prisoners and takes down the PKs, including Sergeant Anderson, before talking to Sophie. She admits that she can't actually get Aiden to the Central Loop now, as without the protection of their UV lights, the PKs have been forced to retreat into the metro tunnels. Fortunately, Hakon has another idea, and tells Aiden to meet him at the workshop. If Aiden had sided with the peacekeepers up to the Tango Hotel, then after Aiden confronted Barney, Barney would be taken away by the PKs to answer for Lucas's death. Aiden will catch up with them at the metro station, where Aitor is trying to get information and a confession from Barney, who is giving them neither. Aitor, though, will keep his word and allow Aiden to enter the tunnels to get to the Central Loop. Hakon will be coming with Aiden, and together they enter the tunnels. On the way, though, things go wrong. First, the power goes out, and the ventilation with it, and Aiden has to make his way to the generator to restore power to the tunnels. Shortly after Aiden gets the generator on, there are noises above them and a barrier drops down, separating Hakon and Aiden. Hakon tells Aiden he can open the barrier if Aiden gives him the GRE key. Aiden hands it over and Hakon takes off, leaving Aiden to survive the infected and wait for Hakon's return. Aiden is instead rescued by Sergeant Anderson, who had been sent by Aitor. Anderson gives Aiden an explosive, which he is able to use to access a technical corridor and eventually make it to the surface. As soon as he emerges from the hatch though, he is attacked by Barney, who has escaped the PKs. Turns out that Hakon had also been attacked by them and then run off after they roughed him up. Aiden has no choice but to fight Barney again, this time taking him down for good. When Aiden leaves the building, he will see the PK's windmill has been blown up, even without him helping the bazaar, causing the power issues in the metro. Though Aiden made it out of the metro, Anderson hadn't been so lucky, and the loss of power has left her stranded in an elevator in the dark. Aiden can choose to try to save her, but it takes too long, and in the dark, she has turned. All Aiden can do for her is grant her mercy. Aitor radios Aiden and tells him that the explosions have blocked the tunnel and it can't be used to get to the central loop. Aiden tells him that's okay and there's something that he needs to get back first anyway. Hakon will then radio him and tell Aiden to meet him at the workshop. Regardless of who Aiden sided with, he ends up meeting Hakon at the workshop to see what the other option of getting to the central loop is, and to recover the GRE key if he gave it to Hakon in the tunnels. Hakon tells Aiden to follow him, but as soon as Hakon opens the door, he is struck by a crossbow bolt. Aiden pulls the door closed and goes to check on his wounds, but finds another wound he wasn't expecting, gouging from the Lazarus. Aiden realizes that it was Hakon who killed Commander Lucas, and Hakon admits that he did so on Waltz's orders. Aiden demands to know where Waltz is, and Hakon tells him that he's meant to meet Waltz under the electric car factory in the GRE tunnels. Hakon believes that he's going to be killed, and asks Aiden if he is really going to leave him now. Aiden could choose to just walk away, and leave Hakon to live or die on his own. Alternatively, Aiden could choose to chase down the sniper, finding that it is a woman. She takes advantage of his surprise to make her escape, telling Aiden to tell Hakon that this isn't over. Either way, Aiden would then make his way to the GRE tunnels that Hakon spoke of. Regardless of the previous choices Aiden made, when he gets inside the tunnel and turns on the generator, he is joined by Aitor and 3 other PKs. Even if Aiden had sided with the Bazarians, Aitor would still be willing to work with him after he told him that Waltz was there and had been behind Lucas's death. The power is then cut off and Aitor asks Aiden to investigate. When he does so, he finds that the cable had been intentionally disconnected. Aiden reconnected the cable and made his way back to the main tunnel, where the PKs had seemingly detained Waltz. Waltz tells Aiden to give back the GRE key or they will all die. At hearing this, one of the PKs strikes Waltz, and Waltz immediately retaliates, completely overpowering both the PKs and Aiden before taking the GRE key. Aiden loses consciousness, and when he comes to, he finds a group of renegades investigating the dead PKs. They see Aiden moving and go to attack him. As Aiden fights, he is momentarily overcome by his infection, and he tears the renegades apart. He comes back to himself in the light at the end of the tunnel, and hears Waltz's voice coming over one of the renegades' radios, saying that he is in the car factory. Aiden goes after Waltz, remembering that he had taken the GRE key. He finds the factory and fights his way through more renegades before finding Waltz. Aiden immediately attacks Waltz, knocking him to the ground and asking where she is. Waltz overpowers him and realizes that Aiden is one of the children he had experimented on. He tells Aiden that before he kills him, Aiden will get to witness something spectacular, history in the making. Aiden yells at Waltz for experimenting on children, and Waltz tells Aiden that he owes him for still being alive. As Waltz strangles him, Aiden asks what he did to Mia. At hearing Mia's name, Waltz realizes who Aiden is and drops him. But before he can say anything else, Waltz is twice struck by familiar crossbow bolts. The same sniper as before runs in and grabs Aiden, telling him to run as Waltz is transforming. Aiden grabs the GRE key and follows her. They flee from the feral Waltz, eventually escaping when the sniper hits Waltz mid-leap, sending him deep into the tunnels below. With the immediate threat removed, the sniper tells Aiden to give her his arm, and she compares their markings, explaining that she was also one of Waltz's subjects when she was a child. She tells Aiden to follow her again and leads him through the tunnels. They come across a locked door in the tunnels which Aiden is able to open with the GRE key. The sniper asks where he got the key and if he knows Dylan. Aiden tells her that Dylan gave him the key before Waltz killed him, and that Dylan had told him to find someone called Luan. The sniper tells Aiden that she is Luan, and that Dylan had contacted contacted her about wanting to leave the city, as Commander Lucas had found the GRE key, which finally explained why Waltz had Lucas killed. Continuing on, they find that the electricity has come back online in the central loop. They emerge from the metro, and Lawan leads Aiden to a roof, wanting to see the city lit up for the first time in 15 years. Lawan also gets a call from a friend, Danya, who is wondering how the electricity came back on, and is asking Lawan to stop by the canteen. As Lawan confirms that they are on their way, the lights go back out. Lawan then tells Aiden that the canteen will have to wait, and that they should check the substations, and tells him to go to one near the Peacekeeper base. There he finds 3 PKs outside, who also want to get the substation back online. After they all deal with some renegades with the same idea of taking the power for themselves, Aiden made his way inside. There he manages to reconnect the cables and get the substation back online. Aiden can then choose whether to assign the substation to the survivors or the PKs. Whatever choice he makes, Lawan will then contact him and tell him to come to the Fisheye canteen. At the Fisheye, she introduces him to Danya, and then takes him to talk to Frank about why Waltz turned the power back on. Frank, though, is heavily intoxicated and lost in his memories, talking to someone he lost a long time ago. The most that he can tell them is that if they are looking for the GRE database, they will need a terminal to access it, but he has no idea where one would be. A siren then sounds outside of Frank's quarters, and Aiden leaves the room to see that the renegades are attacking. Aiden helps fend off the attack by putting down a number of renegades and deactivating cannons that they are using to fire upon the canteen. Lawan then calls Aiden back to Frank's quarters, where a renegade holds him at knife point. Lawan takes out the renegade, but another renegade surprises them and knocks Aiden down. He is about to stab him before being taken out by the commander of the Peacekeepers in the central loop, Jack Matt. Aiden takes the opportunity to ask Jack Matt about the GRE database. Jack suggests asking Lieutenant Rowe, whose unit had been securing the Culvert Island and New Dawn Park areas. The PKs have gone radio silent due to the renegade threat, so Aiden and Lawan will need to look for Rowe themselves. Jack also asks them to pass on some written orders if they find him. Lawan says that she's going to catch up with Aiden, so Aiden heads to Culvert Island first by himself, but Rowe isn't there. Aiden passes on the orders to Lieutenant Grady instead, who is unhappy to see that they're being recalled. Aiden then looked for Rowe at New Dawn Park, and finds that his unit ran into trouble with renegades. After taking out a number of renegades and freeing the captured PKs, Aiden finds Rowe. Rowe is enraged at being recalled to the center, ranting about the people who they lost securing their position. He is in no mood to answer Aiden's questions about the GRE database. He will, however, answer Lawan, who has just caught up with Aiden. Unfortunately, he tells them that the database is in the observatory, which was destroyed in the bombings. Lawan doesn't believe that there will be anything left at the observatory after the bombing, but Aiden is determined to check anyway, unwilling to let go of this possible lead on his sister. On the way, Jack Matt calls and says that he heard the place Aiden is looking for was destroyed, but he might be able to help him, and we'll get back to him about this. When Aiden reaches the observatory, he finds that there are only ruins left. He radios Jack to ask about how he can help, and is told to come to the Peacekeeper's ship. As Aiden puts the radio away, he is temporarily overcome by the virus and passes out, coming to on a rooftop, surrounded by bodies of the infected, and 2 terrified survivors. Not knowing what happened, Aiden makes his way to the PK ship, and when he arrives is told to report to Maya at dispatch, as Jack Matt is still out in the field. Aiden reports to Maya, and as they are talking, Jack Matt's team returns carrying a barely alive Aitor with them. Aiden goes to speak to Jack about the database, and he tells Aiden that the PKs are tracking down some GRE scientists in the city, and will find the answers Aiden is seeking. But in return, Jack wants Aiden to help take back the VNC tower from the infected. He sends Aiden back to Maya to discuss the plan. She tells Aiden that the PKs plan to use the VNC's tower antenna to broadcast their call for mobilization, but first they need to reach it. The tower itself is a volatile hive and a death trap, the place where Frank's night runners were wiped out trying to reach the same antenna. The PKs plan to light the place up with UV lamps if Juan Reyna, the man in charge of supplies, does his job. And so Maya sends Aiden to chase up Juan. Aiden does manage to track him down at the fisheye, but finds him unwilling to cooperate. Lawan suggests that Aiden try bribing him and recommends that Aiden check out a penthouse which belonged to an art collector and see if there's anything left there. Unfortunately, all the paintings have been destroyed, but the collector did have a nice bottle of whiskey and a bottle of vodka beside him. Lawan recommends offering the whiskey to Juan and giving the vodka to Danya for his birthday. Before returning to Juan, Aiden drops by the fisheye for Danya's birthday, giving him the bottle of vodka and catching up with Lawan and Rowe. After leaving the party, Aiden delivers the whiskey to Warren and finds him much more receptive. Warren is worried about Jack Matt's true intentions. His spies among the renegades have told him that the Colonel is not planning any attack. Warren also doesn't think it was the Colonel who gave the order for the attack on the canteen. He wants Aiden's help to investigate Jack Matt, and tells him that he'll be able to find the GRE scientists for Aiden faster than Jack, if Jack could find them at all. Aiden then has to make a choice. If he chooses to help Warren will say that he will deliver the UV lamps to stop Jack Matt from becoming suspicious, and asks Aiden to meet with a tech specialist at the cathedral to fix an old piece of spy tech, so that they can bug the transmitter Jack Matt plans to place on the VNC antenna. After surviving the cathedral, Aiden speaks with a specialist who is able to fix the bug, asking only for Aiden's friendship in return. Aiden returns the bug to Juan and is given the go-ahead to let Jack know that the lamps will be delivered to the tower. Aiden does so and is told to wait for Jack's signal. If Aiden refused to help Juan, then he will instead have to track down the men who were meant to retrieve the UV lamps. He finds that they ran into trouble with the infected and renegades, and has to go after the lamps himself. Once he finds them, and deals with a nearby demolisher, he contacts Juan's man, Demelin, who confirms that his boys will come and collect the lamps. Aiden then reports back to Juan and is able to tell Jack Matt that the lamps will be delivered. Either way, shortly after Aiden deals with the lamp situation, Jack will order him to come to the fisheye. There he will find Jack, Juan, and Ro discussing the plan to take the VNC tower. Jack has sent a unit to the substation which powers the tower's district, with orders to get it up and running. Ro is going to take his men to establish a perimeter at the tower. Once that is done, Juan's men will bring in the lamps and set up an outpost. Aiden will then ride the elevator to the top and attach the transmitter to the antenna. Before heading over to the VNC tower, Aiden stopped in with Luan, who begged him not to do this and to talk to Frank about the tower instead. Even if Aiden chooses to talk to him, Frank is unhelpful and will only tell Aiden that the tower is going to kill him. On the way to the VNC tower, Aiden is contacted by Ro, who tells him that something went wrong at the substation and to check it out. There he finds the PK unit had been slaughtered by renegades. Aiden has to take the renegades out and get the substation back online. Once this has been accomplished, Aiden makes his way to the VNC tower. At the tower, Ro says that there has been an issue with the elevators, which his men are working on. As they are talking, the lights go out. Ro receives a report that the substation is still operational, meaning the issue is in the tower. One of the men in the tower calls Ro in distress, and Ro and Aiden split up, trying to reach them. Aiden first finds Leon, who is not in a good way, and asks Aiden to take a letter to his wife on the ship. Aiden then goes after Chris and finds that he has already turned. Aiden has to put him down before turning the power back on. By the time Aiden returns to where Leon was, the man is gone. With the power back on, Aiden grabs a power cable and links the power up to the elevators. He meets with Ro on the 8th floor and is told that they are waiting for Jack. While waiting, Aiden bonds with Ro's men before bunking down for the night. Ro wakes Aiden up after Jack arrives. Jack has a lead on the GRE scientists and tells Aiden that they will talk about it after the transmitter is hooked up. Aiden heads up in the elevator with Ro's unit until the power malfunctions with the elevator stuck on the 30th floor. Jack tells them they can't wait for the power to be fixed and orders them to walk up the additional 50 floors. The unit, though, doesn't even make it 50 meters before being obliterated by exploding infected. It is all Ro can do to push Aiden to safety in the elevator. The rest of Ro's men don't make it, and Ro was barely able to pull himself and the transmitter away. He gives the transmitter to Aiden and begs him to take the dog tags off the fallen PKs, so they won't be forgotten. With that, Ro dies, and Aiden radios Luan, letting her know that he is in trouble. She gets Frank, who tells Aiden to find some Night Runner equipment in an elevator shaft. Aiden finds a Night Runner grappling hook and uses it to start scaling the tower. When he has nearly made it to the roof, an angry Frank radios him and tells him that Luan is trying to follow him. The PKs will stop her, and Aiden tells Frank that he is nearly at the top anyway. When Aiden finally reaches the transmitter, Frank will ask Aiden to consider giving him control of the antenna. His Night Runners had tried to take the tower to create Radio New Hope, to spread messages of hope and help among the survivors. Aiden then has a choice to make. He could give control of the transmitter to Frank, or he could give it to Jack. If Aiden was helping Juan, then in giving it to Jack, he would also install Juan's bug. Choosing to give the radio to Frank will lead him to starting up Radio New Hope, while giving it to Jack Matt will lead to the Peacekeepers transmitting propaganda, encouraging new recruits. Installing the bug will also allow Juan to spy on Jack. Either way, Luan will finally catch up with Aiden and will demand Aiden help her retrieve a pair of shoes from her apartment, to replace the pair she ruined trying to get to Aiden. Aiden follows Luan to the apartment building and, at her request, enters her apartment alone. Inside he finds the shoes, along with evidence that Luan and Hakon used to be together. He takes the shoes to Luan's rooftop and waits for her there. He also returns the photo of her and Hakon. Luan is upset with Aiden for snooping, and still angry with Hakon for how things ended, and his betrayal of the Night Runners, for convincing some of them not to go to the VNC Tower for the Night Runner mission all those years ago, and leaving Frank and the others to die. The next morning, the person Aiden gave control of the VNC antenna to will contact him. If he gave the antenna to Frank, Frank will ask him to come to the fisheye. There he tells Aiden that with the antenna, they are now able to pick up some of the Renegade's radio signals. Frank will direct Aiden to activate more antennas to expand their reach, and to pick up more about what Waltz is up to. On the way to the second antenna, Frank tells Aiden that the Colonel is evacuating his people, so it doesn't seem like he wants to fight any more than they do. When Aiden turns the second antenna on, they hear Renegades talking about meeting with Waltz in Garrison Boulevard. Aiden goes to the meeting place and finds a group of Renegades, but no Waltz. He wipes the Renegades out and Frank arrives, saying that Hakon is waiting in a church, wanting to talk to Aiden about Waltz. Aiden goes to meet Hakon, but finds it was a trap. Hakon demands the GRE key, and sets some of Waltz's renegades on Aiden when he refuses to hand it over. Aiden eliminates them and talks to Hakon, asking if he is really ready to kill him for the key. Hakon apparently is ready to kill for the key, and the two fight. After Aiden defeats Hakon, he radios Frank, who tells him he overheard Waltz talking about heading to Old Villador and tracking down a GRE doctor. As Aiden goes to leave, Hakon gets up and demands the key again. If Aiden had left Hakon to die earlier, Hakon will leave him no choice but to kill him now. If Aiden had helped Hakon earlier, he will be able to talk him down. Luan will enter the church, intending to kill Hakon herself. Aiden will then have to choose between letting her kill him or helping her let go of her need for revenge. If Aiden had chosen to give the VNC tower to Juan instead, Juan will contact him and call him to his quarters. There, he will tell Aiden that his spying revealed that only half of the UV lamps he delivered arrived at the VNC tower. The rest were taken elsewhere. Juan fears that Jack will attack the dam, and that Colonel Williams will react by closing the sluice gates, leading to the chemicals in the ground to rise and kill everyone in the city. They need to follow the lamps to uncover Jack's plan. Right now, the lamps are at the metro station next to the Peacekeeper base. As Aiden goes to leave the base, he sees Danya, who tells Aiden that he is there on business. Aiden then goes to the metro, arriving in time to see the train with the lamps leaving. Aiden follows the signal from the train and catches up to it at the downtown metro station. The train is just about to leave again though, and Juan orders Aiden to get on it. He does so just in time. When the train stops, Aiden sees the PKs unloading the lamps. He goes to find the crates, but by the time he does, they are empty. Aiden then checks outside the station and finds that they are by the electric car factory, where Waltz had turned the city's power back on. He is discovered by Jack, who tells him that they are merely securing the power plant to prevent it from falling into renegade hands. Aiden reports this back to Juan, who does not believe Jack's explanation. If Aiden had chosen to give Jack control of the VNC tower, then Jack will simply ask him to expand the PK's radio reach. After Aiden activates one antenna for Jack, there will be an explosion nearby, the renegades having destroyed one of the antennas. Aiden will need to race to the third antenna to activate it and to stop the renegades from destroying it. Regardless of who Aiden is siding with, after he completes their mission, they will direct him to find Dr. Veronica Ryan, telling Aiden that she was the GRE doctor they were looking for all along. Aiden will return to Old Villador to look for Veronica. If during his time in Old Villador, Aiden had helped the Bazaar attack the Peacekeepers, he will find Barney in the Bazaar and ask him about Veronica. Barney will tell Aiden that the renegades are hunting Veronica, and she is holed up in a safe house, with Vincenzo and a few other Bazaarians protecting her. If Aiden had instead sided with the Peacekeepers in Old Villador, then when he arrives at the Bazaar, he will find that it is no more. Aiden wasn't there to save the Bazaar when the Peacekeepers retaliated after the attack on the windmill. An injured Sophie is still inside the Bazaar, and she is willing to tell Aiden where Veronica is, in the hope that he gets her killed. She wants that for Veronica, as Veronica used to help the PKs as well, and believed that they were people, just like the people of the Bazaar, a sentiment that Sophie does not share. Either way, Aiden heads to the safe house and finds that the renegades got there first. Aiden takes the renegades out and finds Vincenzo, who tells him that Veronica managed to escape. Vincenzo radios her and puts Aiden on. Aiden tells Veronica that he knows that she worked for the GRE, and that he has the GRE key and needs access to the database. Veronica tells Aiden to meet her near the observatory. If Aiden had been helping Juan, Then just as Aiden goes to leave the formerly safe house, Juan will contact him and say that Jack has reloaded the UV lamps and is on the move. He will ask Aiden to adjust an antenna on top of an electrical substation to extend his reach in order to hear where Jack will launch the attack on the dam from. This task is purely optional for Aiden, and he could choose to ignore Juan and go to meet Veronica. If he does agree to help Juan, then after adjusting the transmitter, Aiden will go after the signal it picks up and will find Danya and a PK meeting with a renegade, a driver named Steve. The PK instructs Steve to inform them when he is due to drive to the dam, saying that they will pack a surprise inside. Aiden reports this to Juan, but Steve overhears, and Aiden has to chase the driver down. Juan tells Aiden not to kill Steve, and that they can make a deal with him. Steve says that all he was meant to do was drive Jack and his men to the Colonel's stronghold. Aiden returns to Juan at the fisheye, who says he's going to present the evidence against Jack Matt, both for what he is doing now and what he did 11 years ago. Juan reveals that Matt ignored Colonel Williams' order to evacuate, instead positioning himself where he knew he would survive the bombings, but allowing 300 soldiers and 1,500 civilians to die, just to make himself look like a hero who stayed with them till the end. Jack placed the blame onto Colonel Williams, giving him the nickname of the Butcher. Juan wants Aiden to find a witness, a renegade officer who was once a soldier under Jack's command, who saw him ignore the evacuation order. Aiden will go to the renegade outpost at the church, but the renegade officer won't be there, as, ironically, the colonel has evacuated some outposts. Hakon will be at the church though, and the same confrontation will occur as it did on the survivor path. This time though, if Aiden tries to talk Lawan down, Hakon will strike her over the back of the head and leave her regretting not taking the shot. Aiden reports to Juan that the renegade witness wasn't there, but Juan tells him that he found several other witnesses to Jack's war crimes, and so is preparing for Jack's trial. Back at the not-so-safe house, if Aiden had been helping the peacekeepers, Jack would contact him instead and ask him to help Lawan take out a renegade officer before meeting Veronica. If Aiden takes up this optional task, it will again lead him to the church and the confrontation with Hakon. This mission for Jack is also entirely optional, meaning that if Aiden was backing Jack or Juan, the confrontation with Hakon never needed to take place at all. Regardless of his choices, Aiden will then meet Veronica by the dam, and they will go up to the observatory. She explains that when the GRE developed the THV GenMod chemical, they also created shots, which would provide their employees with protection from the fumes for a few minutes. Veronica has 2 shots and gives one to Aiden. He is then able to make it through the chemicals into the building, and inside get the power back on to let Veronica in. Together, Aiden and Veronica then make their way through the facility. On the way, Aiden finds Veronica's office and learns that she was not just a doctor with the GRE, but the director of their field laboratories department. Aiden confronts her about her involvement in the experimentation on children. She tells him that young children showed a natural immunity to the virus and seemed to be the only hope for a cure. The pair find the GRE database, which has a record of Aiden from 2020, with a warning that he showed an above-average tolerance to the substance, and that he had the most tests performed on him, to exemplary results. Aiden also learns his surname for the first time, Caldwell. Information on Waltz gives them location of the experiments, X13. There is no record for Mia at all. The database also says that there was a procedure commenced 11 years ago, which was then paused and resumed a few days ago in X10. There is also a map with a number of locations marked. Veronica doesn't know what this means, and before they can work it out, they are interrupted by renegades. Aiden takes the renegades out and goes to catch up with Veronica. She has figured out that the marked locations are targets for missile strikes related to a failsafe protocol, and they don't have much time to stop it. Aiden radios Frank to warn him about the strike, though if Aiden did not give him control of the VNC tower, he will have no way of sending out an emergency broadcast. Aiden and Veronica are then interrupted by more renegades. Aiden deals with them and goes to look for Veronica, but finds that Waltz got to her first, and is holding her by the throat, demanding the GRE key. Aiden uses a nearby container to hit Waltz from behind, knocking him to the ground. He urges Veronica to run and they flee from Waltz, making it outside just before him. Aiden tells Veronica to get away and she heads for the other dome. Aiden and Waltz fight, until Aiden is on the verge of having his infection overcome him. Waltz takes advantage of his condition and throws him over to Veronica's dome. In his state, Aiden is unable to stop himself from killing her. He comes back to himself in time to see Waltz searching Veronica's body for the key and taking it. Aiden demands to know what Waltz has done to him, and Waltz says that he has shown him the truth, and that it's too late. Aiden sees a missile hitting the city before another one hits the dome, and he is knocked out. He comes around to Luan pulling debris off him. As she carries him out of there, he tells her that Waltz took the key. When he regains consciousness again, Aiden tells Luan what he did to Veronica, and that he is turning. Luan can't believe it though, and tells him that Veronica was torn apart, as though by a volatile. Luan and Aiden hear the sound of a building collapsing and go to look out over the city. Luan says that the Colonel is finishing what he started 11 years ago, but Aiden tells her this is Waltz, and it all started when he used the GRE key. If Aiden has been siding with Frank, Luan will tell him that Frank is taking Juan and Jack to meet with the Colonel, who apparently wants to talk. Luan asks Aiden to go to the fisheye to talk Frank out of it. Aiden does go to the fisheye but tells Frank that if he is going to the Colonel, then Aiden is going with him. Frank tells him that the stakes are too high. The Colonel has warned him that there are going to be more missile strikes, and most of the central loop will be destroyed. Frank also tells him that of the 20 cities isolated by the GRE at the start of the pandemic, only Villador remains, and only because someone stopped it from being bombed along with the others. Frank thinks that this was the Colonel. Aiden passes out due to his infection, and has a flashback of being in the tunnel, tearing apart the renegades and Aitor being afraid of him. Once he has recovered, he and Frank go to get Juan, and the three go upstairs to meet Jack Matt. Jack, Frank and Juan head out, and Aiden follows, finding Juan watching the other two who had gone to meet the renegades. As a van pulls up, Frank is shot with a poisoned arrow. The van pulls away and Aiden jumps down to help the PKs fight off the renegades. Once the renegades have been eliminated, Aiden goes to Frank, and Jack urges him to go after the van. Aiden has to choose between going after the van straight away or helping Frank. If Aiden goes after the van, Frank will die. But if he chooses to help him, then Juan will tell him to take the arrow to a healer. This healer will tell Aiden that the poison on the arrow is not one used by the renegades, and will tell him how to make an antidote. Aiden will return with the antidote and save Frank before looking for the van. If Aiden had not been siding with Frank, then after Luan dragged Aiden away from the observatory, she will instead pass on a message from the person he did help, saying that they want to talk. She also tells Aiden that she needs to check on the wounded, and that Frank, unable to warn people via radio broadcast without the VNC antenna, has gotten pretty badly hurt, going around trying to warn people of the attack. If Aiden sided with the Peacekeepers, he will go to the PK Fortress, and he will arrive to the site of Juan's execution. Maya proclaims that Juan is a traitor, who had been conspiring with the Colonel. Juan will admit to speaking with the Colonel in order to save the city. He will tell the assembled PKs that the Colonel is innocent, and that Jack is the real butcher. Juan demands a fair trial, but this is denied to him. As he is pushed to his death, he calls out to Aiden, telling him that the Colonel must not die and that he is his only chance. But his sentence is cut off before he can finish his warning. When Aiden goes to talk to Jack, Jack claims that Juan was a liar and a traitor. Aiden asks Jack about getting into the stronghold to stop the missile launch started by Waltz, and Jack will tell him that he needs Aiden to lower the bulkheads in the dam to allow his men to access it and attack the renegades. Jack has one of the Colonel's drivers on his payroll, and they will take Aiden into the stronghold. Jack tells Aiden to wait for his signal. If Aiden had instead sided with Juan will be hiding out in Roe's old outpost. When Aiden finds him, Juan will say he is hiding from Jack, who wants his head. Jack has found out that Juan was spying on him, and believes that he is in league with the Colonel. Before Aiden can ask him about this, they heard noises inside the building. Aiden investigates and finds that the PKs have found Juan's hiding spot. They label Aiden a traitor like Juan, and Aiden has to eliminate them. When Aiden returns to Juan admits to being in contact with the Colonel, and says that just as the Colonel was not responsible for the attack 11 years ago, he is not responsible now, and he is not working with Waltz. Jack plans on attacking the dam to cover his own crimes, and this will destroy the city. Juan tells Aiden that he knows a driver who can get Aiden into the stronghold, so that he can talk to the Colonel face to face. It will take some time to arrange this, and Juan will radio Aiden when his ride is ready. Regardless of whether Aiden sided with Jack or Juan, after his conversation with them, Luan will tell him that the missile strike resulted in lots of casualties, and that Frank is in critical condition. She will ask Aiden to come to the fisheye. When Aiden gets there, Frank is dying, and he asks Aiden to protect Luan before he passes away. Luan is devastated by the loss, and she swears vengeance on Colonel Williams and Waltz. Aiden will report into Juan or Jack and ask about the driver. He will also tell them about Frank's death and LeJuan's intention to hunt Williams and Waltz. Jack or Juan will tell Aiden to stop LeJuan from going after them, as this will ruin their plan. Aiden tries to talk LeJuan out of going to the stronghold, and it appears to work, until Aiden wakes in the morning to find a note from LeJuan, saying that she could not stay. Aiden's contact will be very unhappy about this turn of events, and will tell Aiden to get to the driver. Regardless of whether he had sided with Frank, Jack, or Juan, Aiden will then go to the van and see it entering a building, with the roller door closing behind it. Aiden finds another way in, but the floor breaks beneath him and he falls into the basement with the infected. He runs from the infected and manages to escape them, before making his way through the rest of the building. Along the way, he will face renegades if he had sided with the peacekeepers, or survivors, or face peacekeepers if he had sided with Juan. Siding with Juan will also lead to a final confrontation with Maya, who Aiden can deal with by eliminating her and the peacekeepers, or talking her down and convincing her to let him past. Either way, once Aiden has made it to the garage, he finds the van with the driver still at the wheel. Aiden gets in and tells him to drive to the Colonel's stronghold. The driver complies and gets Aiden inside. Aiden's time in the stronghold will change greatly depending on who he has been siding with. If he had sided with Frank, then Aiden will need to fight or sneak his way past the Colonel's renegades. He will find the Colonel's wife playing piano, and the Colonel will come in to talk to Aiden. The Colonel will ask where Frank is, and Aiden will tell him that Frank is dead, or almost dead, shot by one of the Colonel's men. The Colonel, though, will be confused by this, saying he only sent one man, the driver, Steve. Aiden accuses the Colonel of launching the attacks and ambushing Frank. The Colonel denies this and says that he was the one who stopped the attacks 11 years ago, and he is trying to stop them again now. During their conversation, Jack Matt will also be radioing Aiden, telling him to lower the bulkheads, to let him and his men inside. Aiden will have to make a choice between trusting Jack or trusting Colonel Williams. If Aiden had sided with Juan, then by the time Aiden makes it to the stronghold, the renegades won't really be an issue, as LeJuan has cut her way through the stronghold on her way to the Colonel. By the time Aiden catches up with her, LeJuan will already have the Colonel and his wife at crossbow point. She will tell Aiden to stay out of this, and the Colonel will tell Aiden that if they kill him, they will never stop the next missile strike. The Colonel also tells them that the Fallout protocol that he stopped years ago has been reactivated. Aiden will have to make the choice between trusting the Colonel or siding with LeJuan. If Aiden had sided with the peacekeepers, he will make his way to the stronghold a bit earlier and will find LeJuan on her way to the Colonel. She will trick Aiden, telling him that they need to open the bulkheads for Jack's men, and that the controls are in the next room. When Aiden goes into the room to look, the controls are not there, and LeJuan locks him in, not wanting to lose anyone else. Aiden will then need to find another way to get to the Colonel. When he does, he will again find LeJuan threatening the Colonel and his wife with her crossbow, and Aiden will need to make that same choice between trusting the Colonel or siding with LeJuan. Regardless of whether Aiden had sided with the peacekeepers or Juan, if LeJuan is in the room, then siding with the Colonel will lead to LeJuan being detained by the Colonel's men and taken to sickbay with the promise that she will not be harmed. Siding with the Colonel will lead to the Colonel telling Aiden that Waltz has gone to X-13, and that in turning the power back on, Waltz triggered the failsafe protocol, the same protocol which destroyed the other infected cities and will destroy Villador if not stopped. He will invite Aiden to investigate Waltz's room, while he arranges transport for Aiden to X-13. On the Peacekeeper or Renegade route, if Aiden sides with LeJuan, then she will try to shoot the Colonel, but his wife will get in the way. The Colonel will catch his wife and carry her away while his men attack LeJuan and Aiden, quickly incapacitating LeJuan and leaving Aiden to eliminate the renegades, while Jack yells at him over the radio to open the bulkheads. If Aiden had been siding with the survivors instead, and chose to trust Jack Matt, then LeJuan won't be there, but Aiden will still be left to fight off the Colonel's men and open the bulkheads. Once the bulkheads have been opened and the Colonel's men defeated, Aiden will go after the Colonel. If Aiden had sided with Juan, then the Colonel will have retreated to another part of the dam. When Aiden finds him, he will be mourning his wife, who turns the Colonel's gun on herself. The Colonel will tell Aiden that Juan has managed to convince some of the peacekeepers to mutiny. Even in his grief and anger, the Colonel does not want to see the city destroyed, and so will tell Aiden that Waltz is at X-13. Depending on what Aiden says to him, the Colonel may choose to follow his wife's example, or may choose to live. If Aiden had been siding with the peacekeepers or the survivors, then after the Colonel retreats, he will head to a formerly flooded section of the city, the water having drained when Aiden opened the bulkheads. Aiden will find a new zombie variant in the flooded section, along with a bunker where the Colonel is holed up. Still wanting to save the city, the Colonel will still provide information about Waltz and X-13, before taking himself off the board. Regardless of his choices, the faction that Aiden sided with will provide him transport to X-13, but this transport will be ambushed, and after dealing with the attackers, who are either peacekeepers or renegades depending on Aiden's choices, Aiden will need to continue to make his way to X-13 on foot. While trying to find the entrance to the tunnel, Aiden will start to turn, and he will use his infected senses to track Waltz and locate the tunnel, emerging near the entrance to X-13. As Aiden goes to enter X-13, he will be attacked by a renegade and saved by Lawan, though if Aiden had sided with the Colonel, she hasn't quite forgiven him. Either way though, she will help him through the facility. As they go through the facility, they will be ambushed by Waltz's renegades. Depending on Aiden's choices, Hakon might be with the renegades, and will be willing to see them take Aiden out but not Lawan. Hakon would try to intervene, and he would be injured, with Aiden sending Lawan out to help Hakon while he deals with the renegades. If Hakon isn't there, Lawan will be injured instead, when she jumps in front of Aiden and catches an arrow which was meant for him. Aiden will send her out of the room and again deal with the renegades. After dealing with the renegades, Aiden will return to Lawan, and either find her tending to an injured Hakon, sitting alone, or Hakon appearing and tending to her. Either way, Aiden will go after Waltz alone. In searching for Waltz, Aiden will find the section of the facility where he, Mia, and the other children were kept. He will have flashbacks to his childhood with Mia, and the experiments that were done to him. Aiden will also remember fleeing the lab as it burned. Aiden will eventually see Mia lying on a hospital bed and Waltz attending her. As Aiden makes his way down to them, Lawan will radio him, saying that she has found the missiles. She also tells him that there are a lot of them, and the city won't survive the next attack. Aiden finds Waltz, who warns him to leave the facility. Aiden demands that Waltz give him the GRE key to stop the missiles, but Waltz tells him it's too late. Waltz asks Aiden why he is following him, and Aiden tells him that he had made Mia a promise. Waltz also asks Aiden to try and remember what really happened all those years ago. Aiden remembers seeing Mia as a young girl lying on a table, and asking Waltz if he will cure her. Waltz told him that he is trying, but Mia is much weaker than the other children, which is why she caught the virus. He is searching for a cure, but people want to shut him down, and they need to stick together. Waltz reminds Aiden that it wasn't Mia that he made that promise to, but Waltz. Waltz also reminds Aiden that Mia is his daughter. The two fight, and as they do, Waltz tells him that the key is with Mia, in the machine which will cure her. Waltz then takes an inhibitor to trigger his feral state, while Aiden succumbs to his own infection, with both of them fighting each other like volatiles. With Waltz nearly dead, Aiden comes back to himself, demanding the key one last time as Mia comes in begging him to stop. Aiden tells Mia that without the key, the city will be destroyed. Mia tells Waltz that this has gone too far, and that he has been trying to cure her for years and she doesn't want it anymore. Mia goes to hand Aiden the GRE key, but Waltz knocks it away, causing it to fall into the chemicals and be destroyed. Mia collapses and Waltz begs Aiden to help him. Aiden carries Mia back to the bed and turns on the generator, while Waltz puts the oxygen mask back on her. Lawan then radios Aiden and he tells her that the key has been destroyed. Aiden suggests detonating the missiles inside the facility before they can launch, and Lawan agrees. Waltz, though, begs Aiden to stop Lawan from detonating the missiles, saying that if she destroys X-13, Aiden will lose everyone he loves. Waltz asks if saving the city is worth Aiden losing everything. Aiden will be faced with his final choice, to either let Lawan detonate the missiles or stop her. If he lets Lawan detonate the missiles, Waltz will succumb to his injuries while telling Mia that he is sorry he failed her. Aiden will pick Mia up and carry her out of the facility, as Lawan destroys the missiles and the facility with it. If he instead chooses to stop Lawan, Waltz will encourage him to take an inhibitor, and tells him that there is still time to stop her. He asks Aiden to save Mia and the facility, telling him that Mia only has him now, before succumbing to his injuries. Aiden will make it to Lawan in time to stop her from destroying the missiles, saving her life and the facility, at the expense of most of the inhabitants of the city. If Hakon is alive, he can save whoever Aiden doesn't choose, either carrying Mia out of the facility, or saving Lawan after she sets off the explosives, meaning that if Hakon saves Lawan, the city still survives. Regardless of his choices, Mia cannot be saved, and even if she was taken out of X-13, she will die only a few hours later. If Villador survives, it will then be under the control of the faction Aiden helped. A Villador controlled by the survivors will see a soup kitchen established for the poorest citizens, and the people of Villador continue with a sense of community, led by the Night Runners. Under the Peacekeepers, the people of Villador live under authoritarian rule, where crime can be punished with the death of the suspect and their entire family. Jack will succumb to cancer within 2 weeks of the Peacekeepers taking the city, and Maya will be left in charge. Under Juan, and Colonel Williams if he survives, the city faces food and water shortages, while Juan continues living his best life. The peacekeepers have been reformed into the new bright peacekeepers under Juan's command to maintain order. If the city is destroyed, then most of Villador's citizens will be killed. Any survivors would be directed to go to the fisheye for aid. Regardless of Villador's fate, Spike will come to Villador to deliver a parcel and will ask the fisheye's bartender about Aiden. The bartender will explain that Aiden has left the city due to the impact the inhibitors were having on him. If the One and the city both survived, then she will have insisted on going with Aiden, and they will leave Villador together. Alternatively, if Hakon survived and the city didn't, then he expects Aiden to make good on their deal, to travel together, watch each other's backs, and head to the ocean. Otherwise, Aiden will leave the city alone, to continue his life of wandering as a pilgrim, for as long as he stays human. While Aiden was in Villador, he received a strange call over his radio, an anonymous warning about a coming attack on Old Villador, which no one would survive. The stranger tells Aiden about prize fights, which are a front for a more sinister plan to release a chemical into Old Villador, a stimulant that they use in their fighters, but which would kill regular people. The stranger says that the only way to stop them is for Aiden to infiltrate their tournament. Aiden heads to the first qualifier at the baptistry and is let in by a man named Roy. He goes to the desk and talks to Tatsuo and Roy about signing up. When Roy asks who sent him, a survivor named Chiro interrupts, claiming that Aiden is his boy. Chiro tells Aiden that he knows everyone who comes into his city. Aiden follows Chiro into the arena, and the announcer explains that this is an amateur fight for those wanting to join their ranks. Aiden and Chiro fight the other hopefuls until they are the only two left, the other amateurs defeated but alive. The announcer proclaims them the winners and says that there will be a break until the next fight. During the break, Chiro tells Aiden that his dad was a legend in Carnage Hall, but the Hall betrayed him and also killed Chiro's brother. Their discussion is interrupted by an attack from the champion of Carnage Hall, Skullface, who is after a prototype developed by Tatsuo. Skullface busted the generator and let the infected in. Aiden and the other amateurs have to fight off the infected, while Chiro fixes the generator and gets the UV lights back up. Chiro's father, Ogar, then arrives at the baptistry and is angry to see Chiro there. He doesn't want Chiro in the fights and warns Aiden to stay away from him. Chiro, though, tells Aiden to meet him on the roof. There, Chiro explains that to get to Carnage Hall, Aiden would have to pass 3 tryouts. Aiden seeks out the tryout locations and passes each trial, one being a timed parkour challenge at night, another involving finding crystals in a dark zone during the day, and the final requiring him to eliminate drowners. After the first and second tryouts, Aiden met with Chiro for a drink and learnt more about him, including that he lost his brother at 15, and that his brother had all the fighting skills, but was an artist who never wanted to fight. Their father pushed him to fight though, and he lost his life in the arena. After Aiden passes the 3rd trial, Ogar calls him back to the baptistry. He tells Aiden that Chiro made it to the qualifiers. Ogar wants Aiden to win the qualifier, so that Chiro is eliminated from the competition. Aiden and Chiro both took part in the qualifier, both fighting off the infected on different rooftops. During the challenge though, Aiden hears Chiro over the radio being abducted. He warns Aiden that it is a trap before the radio goes silent. Aiden survives the challenge and earns an invitation to Carnage Hall. He then looks for Chiro but finds only his fedora. Aiden lets Ogar know and then follows a trail of blood to a body. As he turns it over, Ogar arrives and says that it is one of Astrid's men, Astrid being the queen of Carnage Hall. Ogar asks Aiden to go to Carnage Hall and find out what happened to Chiro. While Aiden makes his way into Carnage Hall, the stranger contacts him, saying they can't meet yet for both their safety, and for now to just focus on climbing the ranks, until he gets to fight the mastermind behind the planned attack, Skullface. Aiden finds Cerberus, the man in charge of organising the fights, and is admitted to the arena for his first round. As he walks into the arena with the other hopefuls, the queen of the arena, Astrid, announces that only one of them will leave the arena alive. Aiden survives, and Astrid tells him to choose his fighter name. If Aiden doesn't choose, Astrid will call on the crowd to name him, and Aiden is then given a room for his time in Carnage Hall. There he radios Ogar, who says that Cerberus won't tell Aiden anything about Chiro until he progresses in the fights. Sure enough, Cerberus tells Aiden that he can't recall anything about Chiro. He lets Aiden choose his first real tournament, and if Aiden wishes, he can retrace Carl Crane's footsteps in a Harran-inspired set, setting car traps, collecting Anderson drops, switching on power relays, saving survivors, and finally, surviving the night. After completing this first challenge, Aiden returns to Cerberus to arrange the next round, but finds him preoccupied, dealing with the search for a thief who took the previous night's takings. Cerberus will ask Aiden to track down the thief, but even if he doesn't find him, the guards eventually will, and Aiden will be allowed into the next round. After completing a second round, the stranger contacts Aiden with a plan to make Cerberus more agreeable. The stranger sabotages the power supply, and Cerberus asks Aiden to fix the problem, promising to tell him about Chiro after he does. Aiden reconnects the power, and when he returns to Cerberus, he holds up his end of the deal by telling Aiden that Chiro is in the dungeons. The entrance to the dungeons are guarded though, and Aiden is not allowed in. He lets Ogar know of the situation, and then, with nothing else he can do at the moment, continues climbing the ranks in the tournament. Ogar then radios for Aiden to come outside, and when he does so, Ogar tells him of a plan to get into the dungeons, through a building in the gardens. Aiden sneaks past the guards to get in, but is discovered just before he can enter the hatch. Ogar takes out the guard from behind and tells Aiden to go while he takes care of the body. Aiden makes his way through the tunnels into the dungeon and finds Roy among the prisoners. Roy tells Aiden that Chiro had been taken to the arena to die to the infected. Aiden quickly frees Roy and the other prisoners before racing to the arena to save Chiro. He arrives just in time to stop Skullface from killing Chiro. The two fight, but Astrid intervenes and calls Aiden to her office. She tells him she ended the fight to stop Skullface from killing him, as it is time for a new champion. For now though, she just wants Aiden to keep climbing the ranks. Aiden asks for her to free Chiro in return for his cooperation, and she agrees. Aiden finds Chiro in the bar, and he tells Aiden that Astrid has asked him to be a fighter, and has given him the name of Cain. Aiden tries to convince him to quit Carnage Hall and meet his father outside, but Chiro refuses. Aiden then goes back to Ogar alone, telling him that Chiro is determined to stay, and that Aiden plans to kill Skullface to protect him. Ogar offers Aiden his old armor and weapon, and if Aiden decides to look for it, he will eventually be led to Freddy Stammer, the gear's current owner. Freddy calls Aiden Abel, and has mistaken him for Ogar's son, who he gambled away to the arena. Ogar will then confess to Aiden that he was meant to throw his last fight, but he didn't, and in retaliation, Astrid made him choose which of his sons to give to the arena, to be trained as a gladiator. Abel was a fighter, so Ogar handed him over, and Abel was killed by Skullface. After this, Aiden continued climbing the ranks until Astrid called him to her office. She tells him that too many people are dying in Carnage Hall, and Jack Matt is about to shut them down. Skullface is addicted to the killing, so the only way to save Carnage Hall is to give it a new champion. She also tells Aiden that Skullface has found a way to stop the infected from attacking him, allowing him to use them against his opponents in the arena. She believes that Skullface is experimenting on people in his quarters, and sends Aiden to investigate. Skullface's quarters are disturbing, but there's no direct evidence of the experiments there. What there is a map with some locations on it, only one of which has not been crossed out. Aiden goes to this location and finds a prisoner, who tells him that Skullface has been dragging the wounded from Carnage Hall here, making them turn and killing them. He had smeared a foul-smelling substance on the prisoner, which prevented the infected from attacking him. Aiden investigates and finds a formula and some camouflage grease, reporting this to Astrid and then giving the formula to one of her guards. He then returns to Carnage Hall and continues to climb the ranks until he reaches the knockout stage. Aiden was then faced with a masked challenger, who was revealed to be Chiro. Aiden had to make a choice between advancing in the ranks by killing Chiro, or forfeiting the match. Even if Aiden forfeits the match, he will ultimately be allowed to fight in the finals. Ogar will have infiltrated the guards and saved him from being thrown to the infected, as punishment for forfeiting. When Aiden returns to Carnage Hall, the guards cuff him and bring him to Cerberus, who allows him into the arena. There, he has to fight 4 other finalists, but he won't be alone. Roy and the other prisoners Aiden rescued will help him eliminate them, and then Astrid will call for an intermission as she talks to Aiden. Astrid gives him a jar of camouflage grease to use when Skullface calls for the infected to be led into the arena, as she still wants Aiden to depose her current champion, in order to get Jack Matt off her back. She also tells Aiden that Skullface is Abel, Ogar's son and Chiro's brother. Astrid had lied to Abel, telling him that his father abandoned him, left him wounded and dying, and chose his brother over him. This gave Abel the motivation to fight, picturing his father's face on every enemy he kills. Astrid leaves the arena and the stranger contacts Aiden, telling him that this is it, the last chance to stop Skullface and save the city. Aiden and Skullface fight, but halfway through, Skullface unleashes a special demolisher. Though, if Aiden forfeited his fight with Chiro and spared his life, Chiro will have already fatally wounded the demolisher before the gates were opened. Aiden will go on to defeat Skullface, and when Skullface falls, Astrid will call for Aiden to finish him. As Aiden goes over to Skullface, Astrid tells her version of his story, the boy abandoned by his father who became a monster. Ogar then realizes Skullface is able and calls for Aiden to stop, revealing that he was disguised as a guard again. Astrid goads Skullface to kill his father, while Ogar begs for his forgiveness. Aiden tells Abel that Astrid has lied to him. Abel picks up his blade, but instead of killing Ogar, he hurls it at Astrid. Abel then falls, and in his final act, he gives his mask to Aiden. Aiden can choose to claim the title of Skullface for himself, becoming the champion of Carnage Hall to the roars of the crowd. Alternatively, he can take the mask over to Chiro, saying that he should be the one to wear it, and he can tell Chiro that this time, Carnage Hall lost. If, however, Aiden had killed Chiro during the knockout round, his only options would be to accept the role of champion himself, or walk away from it all. After the fight, Aiden awakens in his room, and finds a tape from the stranger. On the tape, the stranger confesses that he is Abel. He knew that he could not defeat the bloodlust inside of him, that the use of the stimulants had affected his mind so much that he could not control who he was as Skullface. It would soon not be enough for him to infect fighters with anabolics. In time, everyone in Old Villador would have needed to be infected, women and children as well. The part of Abel that was still good reached out to Aiden in the hopes of being stopped. In the end, Abel thanks Aiden for what he did, choosing to believe that in a way, Aiden had saved him, and saved all of those he would have hurt. He asks that Aiden pass on messages of forgiveness to his father, and pride to his brother, and then bids him farewell. Let's take a brief intermission from the story to recognize Dying Light Bad Blood. Bad Blood was Dying Light's version of a battle royale. It came out in early access in September 2018, but never saw a full release. At its peak, it saw 1,374 players in January of 2020. Today, if you can find 2 other players online at the same time as you will be doing well. The premise is that you are collecting blood samples in order to earn an evacuation from Harran. However, only 1 player can be evacuated. There really isn't any story to be had here, though it can be fun to wander around Harran a little while after the events of Dying Light. While Bad Blood is no longer available to buy on Steam, you can still find some keys on key sites if you want to check it out. Returning to the story, after the events of the following, Crane was overcome by the virus. It was like something in him snapped, the virus overcoming every cell in his body, while he fought to retain his humanity. This fight lasted for months, for years, Crane barely holding on to who he was, while the world fell around him. His status brought him back to the attention of the GRE, and to Dr. Marius Fischer, aka the Baron, the head of a pharmaceutical corporation, who had been working with the GRE since Harran on weaponizing the virus. The Baron saw in Crane an opportunity to progress his own experiments. He appointed Dr. Frank Bennett as the principal scientist on what was called Project Alpha. Dr. Bennett's primary objective was to locate, capture, and deliver Carl Crane for experimentation. Tracking Crane was difficult, but eventually they were able to pinpoint his location, and Dr. Bennett sent a team, led by Major Jablonski, to capture Crane alive and unharmed. Crane recalls 2 scientists finding him, wanting to help him. They were attacked by the infected, and Crane stood between the scientists and the Horde, saving their lives but exhausting himself in the process. Once the infected were eliminated, along with Crane's strength, the soldiers came. He realized then that the whole thing had been a trap, and that those scientists had been used as bait. Unable to fight anymore, Crane was taken by the soldiers to the Baron and placed in a drug-induced coma. The Baron kept audio research notes of his experiments on Crane. Crane was the first to undergo the extreme genetic modifications required for the Baron to perfect his new type of monster, the Chimera. The Baron's advances in his research led him to decide that the GRE was no longer needed, and seizing control of their research as well. Dr. Bennett eventually tried to resign his position over ethical concerns with Crane's treatment, objecting to the genetic engineering modification which was occurring. When Dr. Bennett delivered Crane, he had genuinely believed that the Baron intended to treat him, suppress the virus, and restore him. Over time, Dr. Bennett realized that this was not the case. He intended to leave the facility and take his daughter with him, but his resignation was not accepted, and he went from employee to prisoner, forced to continue his work. The Baron in turn also told Dr. Bennett's daughter that her father had been infected and was being held in quarantine. The Baron trained her to be a scientist, just like her dad, and forced her to work for him, in return for the Baron treating her father's infection. For 13 long years, Crane endured the Baron's brutal experiments, gradually losing his will to live, but not his desire for revenge. On the outside, Spike never stopped looking for Crane after Harran, becoming a pilgrim in the hopes that he would eventually find him. Spike eventually did come across some classified GRE files, which said Crane had been captured shortly after the fall of Harran and delivered to the Baron. Spike sought out Aiden's help, and together the two of them tracked down the Baron's last facility in Castor Woods. They launched a 2-man rescue mission, trying to save Crane from the facility, but their attempt was unsuccessful, ending with both Spike and Aiden being captured by the Baron's soldiers. The Baron soon came to realize that the previous experiments by Waltz had created in Aiden an even better candidate for further experimentation. Unfortunately for the Baron, he and his men had underestimated Aiden's inhuman state, a mistake which led to Aiden turning into the Beast and going on a rampage through the facility. The Baron then ordered Crane's release, setting him free and allowing him to believe that he had escaped under his own power. In reality, the Baron was both setting up a new experiment and using Crane to recapture Aiden. Crane gradually comes to, hearing a voice calling to him, telling him to wake up and grab the radio from the body of a soldier. Crane is very weak and he can only drag himself over to the radio. When he does, the voice introduces herself as Olivia and tells him that she is going to get him out of there. Olivia directs Crane through the facility, first to a storage room, where she tells Crane to inject himself with adrenaline. Once he does, the adrenaline appears to counteract the effects of the drugs the scientist kept him on, and he regains some of his strength, just in time to come face to face with some of the infected. After Crane eliminates the first of these infected, Olivia continues to direct him through the facility. Olivia tells Crane to go through cell block B, which is filled with caged infected. As Crane makes his way down the hallway, some of the infected break free, and he has to put them down before making it to an elevator. The elevator is locked down and Olivia has to override the lock. This works, but it also overrides the locks on all of the cells, and the infected are released. They swarm Crane, who is momentarily overcome by his own infection, and tears them apart. Once the infected have been eliminated, Crane regains his humanity and asks what is happening to him, to which Olivia says the Baron has reshaped him. She then tells him to get into the elevator, which he does. The elevator shuts down mid-ascent, and Olivia tells Crane that someone doesn't want him getting away. She also says it's time for her to go, and that Crane is on his own from here, urging him to get out any way he can. Climbing out of the elevator, Crane makes his way up the shaft, eventually making it to the vents. He emerges into an access tunnel just as the lockdown protocols are shutting the containment doors. He manages to slide under the last door just before it closes, and successfully escapes the facility. Once outside, Crane radios Olivia and she tells him that he is in Castor Woods, and gives him directions to an old monastery, saying that she will meet him there. Crane makes his way through the woods to the monastery. He finds that the doors are locked, but he is able to scale a building to gain access. He radios Olivia, who tells him that she is on her way. She also asks him to try to get the generator up and running. Crane does as he is told and heads into the monastery, taking out the infected and turning the generator on. Crane secures the rest of the building and turns on the lights and waits for Olivia. Olivia arrives while Crane is having flashbacks to his time in the lab, and he demands to know who she is and what she wants. She explains that what she wants is for Crane to help her get away from Castor Woods. He asks if she was one of the Baron's prisoners as well, but she tells him it was more like slave labor. The two then come to an agreement. Olivia will help Crane get revenge on the Baron for what was done to him, and in return, Crane will help Olivia escape the valley. Olivia tells Crane that he needs to get his health back, and that he will need equipment and allies to take on the Baron. She tells him the first thing he needs is to regain his strength through the use of GSB, a biocatalyst created in the lab which can be harvested from chimeras, monsters created by the Baron. The Baron is testing these chimeras in the wild, and one of them is nearby. As Olivia says this, there is a convenient roar of the nearby chimera. Crane descends into the monastery courtyard just in time to see the chimera bursting through the door. He fights the monster and after a brief struggle is able to put it down. Olivia joins him in the courtyard just in time to see Crane collapse beside the body of the chimera. She uses a device to extract the GSB from the chimera and injects it into Crane just before he loses consciousness. While Crane sleeps, he dreams of his past, the mother, and Jade. He comes to in the middle of a vision of choking Jade, but finds his hands around Olivia's neck instead. She tells him that he has been out for days, and that she had to inject him with the GSB to save his life. She also explains that each chimera has a different GSB, and each will boost Crane in a different way. She also warns him that they don't know what the long-term side effects will be. For now though, Crane wants to focus on finding allies. He gets ready to head out, and then speaks with Olivia again before leaving, asking her exactly what happens to him when he fights. And she tells him it's a survival response, high levels of cortisol triggering a transformation at the cellular level. The GSB injections will help him master this condition. Olivia also tells Crane about the Baron, that his real name is Marius Fisher, and that he plans to turn the virus into something even more dangerous, and has kidnapped hundreds of people to use in his experiments. He lives in a fortress surrounded by a private army, and is out of Crane's reach, at least for now. Olivia suggests that Crane search for allies in the town, or follow a plume of smoke nearby to see if there are survivors there. She gives him the extractor device to use on chimeras as he finds them. The device will extract 2 samples, one for Crane to inject into himself, and one for Olivia to study. Crane takes the device and heads out towards either the town or the smoke. If he followed the smoke quickly enough, he will find an antisocial survivor, who tells him that the people left alive in the town are barricaded in the town hall. Either way, he will soon overhear a distress call from a survivor at town hall, saying that something is trying to get in. Crane rushes to the town hall and finds the building overrun with the infected, accompanied by the bodies of some of the Baron's men. Once he eliminates the infected, he is attacked by another chimera. Crane manages to put it down and reports in to Olivia, before extracting this chimera's GSB and injecting himself. After recovering from the injection, Crane speaks with the town hall survivors, led by Jacob. Jacob tells him that the beast had wiped out the town hall's defenses, and even their UV lights aren't working as the backup system is down. The sheriff has gone to try to fix it, but that was a while ago and she hasn't returned. Crane makes his way up the town hall tower, along the way finding an injured ranger, who tells him the sheriff is up top. Sure enough, as soon as Crane emerges on the roof, he finds the sheriff fighting 2 infected, before pointing her rifle at him. Crane tells her that the other survivors sent him to help her, and the sheriff then covers him while he goes to reset the power. It doesn't work, however, as one of the infected has destroyed the cables, so Crane has to link up the backup system with the electrical box on the tower. The sheriff and Crane return to the other survivors, and the sheriff sees that the injured ranger has a bite. Crane comments that they just need some Anderson, but is told there hasn't been Anderson for years. The survivors have UV lights, mushrooms, thoughts and prayers, but nothing works anymore against the infection, so the ranger decides to opt out. The sheriff and Jacob argue as Jacob doesn't want death or exile to be the only choices for those who are infected, but the sheriff won't hear it. She organizes her people to guard against further attacks, and another ranger worries about that thing coming back. Crane is confused as he killed the chimera, but the sheriff and Jacob tell him that there is another beast out there, which took off across the rooftops. Jacob also asks Crane to come and talk to him upstairs later. After the survivors disperse, Crane radios Olivia and asks about the Anderson situation, and she confirms that it ran out years ago. Heading upstairs, Crane meets with Jacob. Jacob is worried about the beast, telling Crane that some of the Baron's men had come to the town hall for shelter, but after the survivors let them in, the beast followed. It eliminated all of the Baron's men, and then moved on, strangely without attacking any of the town hall survivors. Jacob is worried that the beast may return, and he asks Crane to hunt it down. The sheriff had seen it leaving across the rooftops, so Crane heads to the roof to find the trail in the night. He follows the trail while avoiding the volatiles until he hears an explosion. He goes to the source of the explosion and finds a massacre, the beast having wiped out more of the Baron's men. Crane overhears someone trying to contact the convoy over a radio, which he picks up. The voice says that they are holed up in a church, while the beast is trying to get in. Crane rushes over to the church but gets there too late, the last of the soldiers in the church being killed in front of him. Crane climbs back up to the rooftops to pick up the trail again, and hears more soldiers over the radio calling for a retreat into the tunnels. Crane follows the beast trail to the tunnels, fighting more infected on the way before finding a soldier who is coughing blood and warning that the beast is still there. Crane sees the beast take out another soldier before launching himself at Crane. The beast goes to attack but stops himself. The dying soldier throws a grenade at the beast, and the beast responds by saving Crane's life, throwing him clear of the blast. When he comes to, he sees that the beast has survived the explosion and is heading off further into the tunnels. He reports in to Jacob, telling him that the beast got away. Volatiles and other infected have been drawn by the sound of the explosion, and Crane has to flee the tunnel, escaping into the light just in time. Outside the tunnel, he radios Olivia, telling her about the beast. She asks him to stop by the monastery before heading back to town hall. There she tells him that she has been studying the chimera samples and found that they share a portion of the same genetic structure. She asks Crane for a sample of his blood to test this theory. Olivia has also found the location of another chimera, and Crane heads off to find it. Instead, he finds the transport that the chimera escaped from and follows its tracks into the swamp. As Crane approaches a strange device in the swamp, he is attacked by the chimera, which has the form of a banshee. This chimera is no match for Crane, and he puts it down easily, using the extractor and injecting himself with a GSB before reporting into Olivia. He then heads back to the town hall to check in with the survivors. Jacob tells him that the tunnel the beast went into leads to the forest, but who knows when it will be back. He also takes Crane to see the sheriff, who needs his help securing their power situation. Until a month ago, they had been powered by a nearby power plant, but it has gone dark. The backup systems are working for now, but they don't know how long they will last. The survivors need the power plant back online, and so Crane offers to check it out. As he reaches the power plant, he hears the foreman over the PA system, warning him that he can't get inside and should just leave. Instead of listening, Crane scales the building to find an access point and locates the foreman inside. The foreman introduces himself as Largo and says that Crane is now as trapped as he is. He explains that the plant is full of infected, something blew up, and now the building is flooded. Crane asks Largo to stay on the radio and guide him through restoring power to the plant. He then heads over to the other building and makes his way down to the turbines, finding that they have been flooded as Largo warned. Crane has to swim down and locate the problem, finding a busted pipe and closing it off. He then leaves the flooded section to ask Largo what to do next, and is told there is a pump on the ground level. The pump is offline, so Crane hooks it up to the backup system. Once the water has drained, Crane heads back down to the turbines, but finds they won't work without water. He needs to find a valve wrench and use it to open the water valves. This works and the turbines turn on, restoring power. He then goes to meet Largo in the control room, commenting that Largo didn't make this easy. Largo tells Crane that this is because the Baron doesn't want the power on, and Largo works for him. Largo turns the power back off as the Baron's soldiers flood in to take Crane. They push Crane too much and trigger the beast within him, and so Crane tears them apart. When Crane comes back to himself, he returns to the control room and gets the power back online. He then contacts the sheriff, letting her know that the power is back on and that it was the Baron who shut it off. As the two speak, Crane hears more of the Baron's men arrive, and he takes them out, letting the sheriff know again once the plant has been cleared. He then returns to the town hall and finds that while the sheriff is glad the power is back on, she does not want to make an enemy of the Baron. Crane urges the sheriff and Jacob towards challenging the Baron, starting with gaining allies and gathering intel for now. The sheriff does not like the idea, but is prepared to send some patrols to keep an eye on the Baron's men. Olivia then contacts Crane and tells him that she has found information about a chimera experiment at the old monument. The information is out of date though, and she suggests that someone at the town hall may know more. Crane speaks with both Jacob and the sheriff about the monument. Jacob confirms that the Baron had placed a large enclosure at the monument, damaging it in the process, while the sheriff mentions that some of her rangers reported that the Baron had containers of chemicals up there and did appear to be running some kind of experiment. At the monument, Crane sees another strange device and finds an empty gas cylinder stamped E and F. Olivia recognizes E and F as a manufacturer of chemical reagents and says that they have a chemical plant south of the city. Crane goes to check it out, and on the way, Olivia tells him to secure a safe zone, where he then spends the night in order to face the E&F plant fresh in the morning. When Crane arrives at the E&F plant, he finds it is well guarded by the Baron's men, and has to find a way to infiltrate the building. Once he is inside, he finds more of the Baron's men and is spotted by one of them. The soldier fires at Crane, but instead hits an electrical box, resulting in the Chimera being held in the facility escaping and killing a number of the men. After eliminating the remaining soldiers, Crane finds another device and follows the cables connected to it to the next room. There he finds a scientist who tells him that they were testing a new virus strain for the Chimeras, but the Chimera has escaped, heading towards the forest. The scientist also tells Crane that the Chimera can be lured by placing a canister of gas into a dispenser, the strange devices Crane had been seeing around the Chimera sites. There are canisters in the basement and a dispenser in the junkyard nearby. Crane heads into the basement to find a canister and loads it into a truck to drive to the junkyard. There he finds the dispenser, but after he loads it up, he is ambushed by more of the Baron's men and has to eliminate them. Once they have been dealt with, Crane finally activates the dispenser, causing a red mist to be released and immediately attracting the Chimera. Crane manages to put it down before radioing Olivia, who tells him she may have already located the next Chimera, and goes through the process of extracting and injecting the GSB. Crane takes the GSB sample to Olivia. Her study of the Chimeras has progressed, and she is able to tell Crane that these monsters possess duplicate fragments of his own DNA, theorizing that the Baron used Crane's DNA to enhance the Chimeras. Crane reacts by saying that he is done injecting himself with the GSB. Olivia protests that Crane is not strong enough yet, but he isn't interested, and plans to go to the town hall to see if they have found any intel on the Baron. He radios the sheriff on the way, and is told that one of the rangers saw the Baron's men near the old salt mine. The sheriff is on her way there now, and so Crane goes to meet her. He finds her overlooking the entrance to the mine, and she says that when she first got there, she saw red smoke coming out of the mine, and more squads going inside. She thinks that they are hunting something in there, and confirms that the Baron went in as well. Crane heads down towards the entrance of the mine, and by stealth or by force makes his way inside. He fights his way through scores of the Baron's men and infected, until he overhears two soldiers talking, and one commenting that Subject Beta is back where he belongs. Crane eliminates these men and makes his way into the next room, finding more soldiers and a large container. Once he has taken out the soldiers, he reports into the sheriff, telling her there is no sign of the Baron. The sheriff then emerges on the walkway above him, pointing her rifle at Crane, apologizing to him but saying she needs to protect her people. Crane is then surrounded and incapacitated by more of the Baron's soldiers, before the man himself appears. The Baron tells Crane that he has a new test subject now, that this new subject is the future, and Crane is the past. Crane manages to grab one of the soldiers and throws him against the container's control panel, unlocking it, telling the Baron to meet his future. The beast emerges from the container, ready to take down even more of the Baron's soldiers. Crane yells for the beast to run, and the Baron tells his men to hold their fire as he needs the beast alive. The Baron doesn't need Crane, though, so causes a cave-in while he and his men escape. Crane survives by jumping into the beast's container. He then finds a new way out of the cave, which requires him to pass through a volatile hive. Once Crane has made it outside, he contacts the sheriff, who is shocked to hear that he is alive. Crane tells her that he is coming for her. She tries to tell him that she had no choice, but Crane isn't interested. He makes his way to the town hall to confront the sheriff, but finds that she has fled before he arrived. Jacob can't believe that the sheriff would set Crane up, and Crane tells Jacob that he is now in charge of the town hall survivors. Crane tells Jacob that the plan to take out the Baron is still on and that he needs intel. Jacob doesn't have intel for him, but knows some people who might. Exiles who were forced out by the sheriff. The sheriff never wanted the town hall survivors to speak of the exiles or contact them again, but Jacob left a connection open, feeling unable to abandon them. Some of the exiles were infected, and some were fugitives from the Baron's labs. They have been able to keep the infection at bay using an infusion made from mushrooms. Crane intends to go and look for the exiles and asks Jacob to reach out to them. As Crane leaves the town, he hears the voice of one of the exiles in his head. The exile explains that they are able to use telepathy and asks Crane to come and meet him at Pembroke Farm, though shortly after tells him to come to a homestead instead, as the farm isn't safe. Crane complies but finds that the homestead isn't safe either, as the Baron's men are there looking for the exile. Crane takes out the soldiers and finds the exile, Sven, in the main house. Sven explains that their shared infection allows them to communicate telepathically, and also tells Crane that the exiles have been spying on the Baron and his people for years. Sven will tell Crane everything, but first wants Crane's help to locate 2 other exiles who have gone missing and can't be reached telepathically. Their last known location was at an abandoned base at a farm west of the homestead. Crane heads to the farm and searches, but finds no sign of the missing exiles. He reaches out to Sven telepathically, and Sven tells him to check the attic. There, Crane finds a map of the Baron's outposts, but no other sign of the missing exiles. Sven tells Crane if they were taken, they're likely at one of these outposts. Crane heads to the nearest outpost, eliminating the soldiers who were there before answering a radio call, pretending to be one of them. The voice on the radio says that they have captured the freaks who attacked the patrol and are taking them to Checkpoint Delta, the pig farm. Crane makes his way over to the pig farm, but arrives just as the exiles are being carried out to a truck. Before he can follow them, he is discovered by one of the soldiers and is engaged in a firefight as the abducted exiles are driven away. After dealing with the soldiers in the barn, Crane follows after the convoy and finds that they had been overcome by the infected. The exiles have been spared, likely due to their own infection, but they are not in a good way, and Crane has to rush them to the exiles' cave for treatment to prevent them from turning. He makes it in time and the 2 are helped into the cave while Crane follows. He finds Sven arguing with the leader of the exiles, Lydia, who wants them to keep a lower profile and remain hidden from the Baron. Lydia is even more upset when she learns of Crane's identity, as the Baron will tear the valley apart looking for him. She orders Crane to leave before walking away. Sven, though, has other plans for Crane, taking him to meet Selby, who is in charge of radio surveillance for the exiles. Sven and Selby want Crane to install an amplifier on the Baron's main relay tower, so that they can listen into his comms. Sven also gives Crane a grappling hook to make this task easier. Crane makes it to the relay tower and installs the device, but all Selby picks up is white noise. It appears the Baron has encrypted the signal. They will need one of the Baron's devices that has the encryption key, like a radio. Crane determines to find a patrol and liberate a radio, and Selby suggests trying around the roundabout in the residential area. Crane takes her advice and heads to the roundabout, coming across one of the patrols, and is able to take down one of the Baron's soldiers and take his radio. He returns the radio to Selby and it works, but the signal is going in and out. Selby says that to fix this, they will need to place transmitters on 2 more towers. The problem is that Selby only has 1 transmitter, and Crane will need to look for another in a military convoy. He makes his way to a nearby convoy, and after taking down the infected soldiers, is able to use their keycard to access the vehicles and locate a transmitter. With both transmitters now in hand, Crane heads to the radio relay, but finds it is inaccessible, and he needs to zipline from a neighbouring tower. Once he does, he is able to install the transmitter on the tower, and Selby tells him that the final transmitter will need to be installed on Belfry Tower in the centre of town. The inner staircase of Belfry Tower is locked, so Crane has no choice but to make the long climb up the outside. When he finally makes it to the top, he installs the transmitter and reports in to Selby. The transmitters were installed just in time, as they pick up comms indicating the Baron's men are about to blow up the town hall, and are planting bombs under the main square as they speak. Crane rushes to stop them, warning Jacob on the way and telling him to evacuate the town hall. The Baron's men, though, have barricaded the doors, trapping the survivors inside, leaving their only hope of survival to Crane. Crane makes it just in time and is able to defuse the bombs. After eliminating the last of the would-be bombers, Crane updates first Sven and then Olivia. She warns him that if the Baron finds out they are listening to his comms, then he will set a trap. She also tells him that she has tracked another chimera and asks him to meet her by the obelisks in the national park. Crane meets her in the national park, and she gives him another update on her research, that the chimera have an increased sensitivity to stimuli, which Crane suggests could be linked to the use of the gas. Olivia tells him that this is a possibility, but she needs to do further research, and in the meantime she wants Crane to take down the chimera she found. Crane heads over to the obelisks. He doesn't find the chimera, but does find an empty dispenser and a gas canister nearby. Once it is installed and the dispenser activated, the chimera appears, firing toxin at Crane. Crane takes down the chimera and extracts the GSB, injecting himself before returning to Olivia with the other sample. She takes the sample, telling Crane that she is going to analyze it and will see him soon. As Olivia leaves, Sven contacts Crane, saying they have overheard something Crane may be interested in. The Baron's scientists were conducting research at a nearby school and ran into trouble with some bandits. Lydia chimes in and says that this is an opportunity, asking Crane to find whatever research he can in the school and bring it back to them. She also instructs Crane to speak with their scout, Ray, once he gets to the school. Ray is sitting outside the school in a decrepit bus. He says that the bandits took out the scientist's guards and are still inside. He also points out an open window as a possible entry point, but warns Crane that it is dark and could be full of sleepers. Ray heads off to look for a getaway vehicle for them, while Crane heads towards the school. As Ray suggested, he is able to gain access via the open window, and sure enough finds that it is full of sleepers and howlers. Crane sneaks past them to make his way to the gym. The gym is full of bandits who attack Crane on sight, and Crane has no choice but to eliminate them before searching for the research. While looking, he finds one of the Baron's scientists, hiding from the bandits in a locked room. The scientist introduces himself as Dr. Camillo Marin. Crane radios Ray to let him know that one of the scientists survived, and Ray says that they should take him back to Lydia. The scientist also offers to give Crane the key to the main archive if Crane doesn't hurt him, and tells Crane that the way out of the building would be through the basement, but it is full of the infected. Crane goes ahead to clear the way, and once he has eliminated the infected, he calls for Camillo to join him outside. He lets Camillo know that Ray will be there soon to get him out of there, and Camillo gives him the key to the archive. Leaving Ray to take Camillo to the Exile's cave, Crane returns to the gym to access the archive. As Crane accesses the archive, the Baron's men finally come to reclaim the school from the bandits. Crane uses the ensuing firefight to make his way out of the building, while both sides are distracted, and returns to the Exile's cave. When he gets there though, Ray and Camillo are nowhere to be found, and Lydia is unable to contact Ray telepathically. She sends Crane to find out what happened. As Crane heads out to look for them, Lydia suggests that Ray may have tried to cut through the village. Following her suggestion, Crane finds Ray's vehicle on fire, surrounded by the infected. After taking care of these infected, Crane finds Ray's body still in the driver's seat. He also sees tracks leading from the wreck to a nearby house. While following the tracks, Crane also lets Lydia know what happened to Ray, and she says that they are on their way to help. Crane finds Camillo inside the house, and Lydia and her exiles arrive shortly after. Lydia and Camillo know each other, and after Lydia sends Camillo with the other exiles, she tells Crane that she and some of the others had previously been test subjects of the Baron. Camillo was the scientist assigned to them, and unlike the others, he treated them like human beings. He was also the one who developed the infusions, which allow them to stay human. Lydia hopes that Camillo may be able to help the exiles increase their powers, to make them stronger against the Baron. She will let Crane know if anything comes of this, and gives him a revolver as a sign of her gratitude. After Lydia leaves, Crane radios Olivia to update her about the research he recovered from the school, and about Camillo. Olivia, in turn, asks Crane to meet her near the cement factory, as she has located another chimera. Crane goes to the factory to meet Olivia, and gives her the data he recovered. She tells him the chimera is inside the factory, and that she will be waiting for him at the monastery after he has put it down. The chimera is in the factory, and prefers to summon other infected to fight Crane, while she hides from him. Crane has to track her down by following the sound of her crying. Once she has been put out of her misery, Crane takes the GSB samples and injects himself before leaving the factory to deliver Olivia's sample to her. When he arrives at the monastery, Olivia is excited to tell him about a discovery she has made. She has learned that the military have used gas on the infected before, a sedative called blue mist. Crane says that he remembers the blue mist and tells Olivia about the cult who the infected wouldn't attack. Olivia explains that the red gas developed by the Baron has the opposite effect, causing unbridled fury in the infected. Olivia has also learnt that her father was behind the initial research, as he had been in Harran at the start of the outbreak. She tells Crane that her father works for the Baron, but not voluntarily, and she was hoping that Crane would be able to get him out as well. But for this, they will need to kill the Baron. Crane leaves Olivia for now to check in with the exiles. Lydia tells him that Camillo believes that with the proper infusions, he will be able to enhance the exiles' telepathic abilities. Camillo believes that with the proper enhancements, Lydia could connect directly with the mind of a non-sentient infected and activate specific parts of their brain, for example directing the hunger they feel towards prey of her choosing. To progress his research, Camillo needs samples of volatile plasma. To get these samples, Crane will need to seek out 3 types of volatile larvae in a volatile hive. Lydia points him in the direction of a nearby hive, and Crane sets out. It appears that the Baron is also interested in volatiles, as Crane finds a number of bodies of his men near the entrance to the hive. While examining the body of one of the Baron's scientists, Crane hears a creature below, near another dispenser. He is then attacked by a volatile-esque chimera, which possesses powers of invisibility. He uses the disturbances in the water to locate the chimera as it attacks, and is eventually able to put it down. After taking the samples from the chimera and injecting himself once more, Crane continues into the hive. Inside, Crane sneaks around the roaming volatiles, and is able to take samples from the 3 larvae. Unfortunately, after Crane takes the last sample, one of the volatiles picks up his scent and alerts the others. Crane is forced to flee for his life. He emerges from the cave and lets Lydia know that the mission was a success. Returning to the exile's cave, he delivers the samples to Lydia, who says she will be in touch when Camillo has something. Crane lets Olivia know that he has come across another chimera, and Olivia, in turn, says that she has more information for Crane, and tells him to meet her near the water treatment plant. When Crane reaches Olivia, she tells him that she discovered that it was her father who delivered Crane to the Baron. She insists that her father had believed the Baron would treat Crane, not torture him. When Crane was found, he was part volatile, part human. Her father was able to restore Crane's humanity, at least on the outside. The Baron wanted to replicate Crane's unique composition, and the chimera were his attempts of doing so, to genetically engineer the perfect predator, which he could control. But chimeras were not the Baron's only research goal. Camillo's telepathy research was another. Olivia doesn't know what the end goal of this research was. Crane, though, is just focused on eliminating the Baron. And for now, Olivia has another chimera for him. She points him to the treatment plant and Crane goes hunting. He finds the colossal chimera and takes it out, taking more samples and injecting himself with more GSB. As Crane leaves, he is contacted by Lydia, who lets him know that Camillo's tests are looking promising. She tells Crane to meet them at the gardener's cottage by the old psychiatric hospital. Crane makes his way to the cottage and meets Lydia and Camillo, who are there with some of the other exiles. Lydia has already taken one of Camillo's infusions, and she feels stronger already. She leads Crane outside and points out the psychiatric hospital building. Camillo says that in order for Lydia to reach her full potential, she needs a particular drug, neurorays, which is kept in the hospital's medical storage room. They ask Crane to go into the hospital and retrieve it for them. Crane is less than enthusiastic about this, but Camillo reassures him, saying that Lydia has developed the ability to influence the minds of the infected. Crane agrees to give this a go and approaches the hospital. With Lydia controlling the infected, Crane is able to pass among them unnoticed. He makes it into the hospital and finds a map, finding the location of the medical storage room in Block B. The door to Block B is electronically sealed, so Crane needs to head to the basement to get the power back on. With the power back on, Crane searches for an employee of the hospital to take their keycard. The keycard grants Crane access to Block B, but the door to the medical storage room has a biometric reader on it. Camillo tells Crane that he will need the fingerprint of an employee who had access to this room. He suggests checking the medical offices downstairs for someone dead or undead in a lab coat. Crane finds the body of a doctor who opted out and kindly left a machete behind, which Crane uses to remove his hand. Hand in hand, Crane returns to the biometric reader and gains access to the medical storage room. As Crane searches the room, the alarm sounds and Lydia loses control of the infected. Grabbing the neurorays, Crane flees the hospital, launching himself out of a window and fleeing the grounds. Lydia and Camillo retreated to the town after the alarm sounded, and Crane heads there to meet them and give them the neurorays. Camillo hopes that with this, Lydia will be able to take complete control of the infected. Before they can discuss this further, Crane picks up a distress call from Town Hall. The Town Hall survivors are under attack by the Baron's men. Crane sprints over, receiving a call from the sheriff on the way. Crane has not forgiven her, but she tells him that they will settle this later, and for now they need to save her people. She also tells him that the Baron's men have placed a device which attracts the infected by the gate. Crane fights his way through the Baron's men to make it to the dispenser and turn it off. As soon as it is off, the sheriff tells him that the Baron's men are on the roofs, and they start firing gas grenades to attract the infected instead. Crane takes to the rooftops to destroy the mortars and take out the soldiers. Once this has been taken care of, he rushes back to the square, removing the gas grenades before they attract too many infected. Just as he removes the last of them, he is warned by the sheriff that a giant monster is on the way. Sure enough, a chimera enters the square, and Crane has to put it down. This chimera was not alone though, and as soon as Crane takes it out, 2 more enter the square. Luckily, Lydia is able to help Crane, and after he damages one of the chimera enough, Lydia is able to take control of its mind and turn it against the other chimera. Once the still hostile chimera has been eliminated, the chimera Lydia is controlling leaves the square. The sheriff then comes down to talk to Crane. He is still furious with her for setting him up, and she tries to explain, stating that some of the Baron's men had caught her on patrol and gave her an ultimatum: give up Crane, or they would kill her and every single one of her people. The sheriff apologizes to Crane, saying she made an impossible choice and feels terrible about it. As the two are talking, Lydia and the others arrive. The sheriff is shocked that Lydia is still alive, and Lydia is also angry at the sheriff, saying that she cast them out and sent the exiles to die, but instead they thrived, and without them the town hall survivors would be dead now. The sheriff apologizes to Lydia as well, saying that she had been wrong about so many things. Both Lydia and Crane agree to put the past behind them, so that they can all come together against their common enemy. Crane wants to take the fight to the Baron, proposing to lure him out of his fortress by capturing the object of the Baron's obsession, the beast. Lydia instructs Sven to take 2 of their strongest telepaths into the forest to try to sense the beast's whereabouts. Lydia also knows the perfect place to trap the beast, a cave nearby their own, and Crane intends to lure it there using the red gas. Lydia and the sheriff leave together to set the trap for the beast, while Crane heads off to the ENF factory to find canisters of the red gas. On the way, Crane contacts Olivia to let her know what they are planning. He locates 2 of the canisters in the basement and brings them outside. He then contacts Lydia, who says they are on their way. She arrives with a couple of the exiles, including Sven, who loads one of the canisters into a truck and pierces it for Crane to use to lure the beast. The other canister will be used in the cave. Lydia gives Crane a baseball bat to use against the beast, reminding him that they need to subdue it, not kill it. The exiles then leave to head to the cave, while Crane drives around locations in the forest where the exiles had sensed the beast. Soon enough, the beast is attracted by the gas and jumps on top of Crane's truck just before he reaches the cave. The truck hurtles into the cave and Crane slams on the brakes, sending the beast flying. Rocks cave in, blocking the entrance, and leaving Crane and the beast trapped inside. Lydia tells Crane that she is going to attempt to gain control of the beast and not to harm it. Crane dodges the beast's attacks to give Lydia time to take control, but it resists her attempts. She asks Crane to weaken him, and Crane obliges, fighting the beast and hurting it until Lydia tells him to stop. She tries again to take control, but the beast is still too strong. She tells Crane to weaken it further but not kill it, and Crane and the beast fight, with Crane ultimately knocking it out. With the beast unconscious, Lydia is able to take control, and Camillo tells Crane that they need to inject the beast with some of Crane's plasma, which should return the beast to his human state. With the beast stable and under Lydia's control, they load him into the exiles' truck, and the exiles take him back to their cave. Crane meets them there just in time to see Lydia wake him up. Aiden awakens as himself, having no memory of his time as the beast. His last memory is of being with Spike and trying to rescue Crane from the Baron. He recognizes Crane and asks where Spike is, and if they found him as well. When Crane says no, Aiden realizes that the Baron must still have him, and insists that they rescue him. Lydia and Crane stop Aiden from leaving, as he is in no shape to go after Spike now, and Crane says they need a plan. The sheriff says that the Baron lives in a massive fortress, with snipers guarding the perimeter. Selby interrupts the planning, running in to tell them that the Baron is on the radio. The sheriff takes the radio, but the Baron asks to talk to Crane. He demands that Aiden be handed over, saying if Crane doesn't comply, everyone he cares about will die. Crane also hears Olivia in the background of the call, and it appears that she has been captured by the Baron. The Baron also mentions that he does have Spike, and that if Crane doesn't deliver Aiden, he intends to turn both Spike and Olivia into mindless abominations. He gives Crane until noon to comply with his demands. Aiden is willing to trade himself for Spike, but Crane rejects this idea. The sheriff thinks that they should have blueprints for the Baron's palace at the town hall. Lydia instructs Sven and Selby to get the exiles' weapons and vehicles ready, and tells Crane and Aiden to get some rest before tomorrow. A few hours later though, Selby wakes Crane, telling him that Aiden is gone. Crane goes to see what has happened, and finds Lydia berating Sven for not keeping an eye on Aiden. The Baron radios Crane and tells him that the beast is safely back where he belongs, though the Baron is disappointed that Crane wasn't with him. Crane demands that the Baron release Spike and Olivia, now that he has what he wants, but the Baron refuses, saying he doesn't have everything, and telling Crane that he has until noon to hand himself over. The group needs a plan, and the sheriff has come through with the blueprints. Jacob has found some escape tunnels on the blueprints, which may serve as a way in. Crane is to take some explosives to use to reopen the tunnels, and then take out the snipers and open the gate for the rest of them. Lydia will then take control of whatever monsters they find. The group heads out, with Crane peeling off to find the entrance to the tunnels. He makes his way through the foundations of the building, using explosives along the way to reopen the sealed tunnels. Once Crane has made it inside the grounds, he eliminates each of the sharpshooters, and when the last of them is down, locates the gate control and opens the way for the others. The exiles and survivors, though, are quickly overwhelmed by the Baron's forces, and Sven is killed. Just as it appears the group is going to be wiped out, Lydia is able to turn the tide of battle by taking control of nearby infected and directing them to attack the Baron's men. Alongside the dead, the group is able to defeat the soldiers, and the Baron retreats inside after attracting 2 chimeras. Lydia says that she has this, and so Crane goes after the Baron. After eliminating the soldiers inside, Crane follows the Baron to the facility below, finding himself in a train tunnel. He follows the tunnel and finds himself in a room filled with caged chimeras. The Baron speaks to him over the PA, saying that Crane should be thanking him, not hunting him, that all the pain and suffering has turned Crane into something extraordinary. Cultivating more gratitude, the Baron releases one of the chimeras, and it attacks Crane while the Baron boasts of having bent evolution to his will. After the first chimera is defeated, the Baron releases another, and another, until Crane is left fighting 3 chimeras at once. Lydia speaks to Crane telepathically, telling him that if Crane weakens the chimeras, she will be able to control them. As Crane continues to damage the chimeras, Lydia is able to seize control of them one by one, and once she has all 3, the Baron's soldiers rush in to attack Crane themselves, but find themselves being destroyed by the 3 chimeras. Crane continues through the facility, traversing the same halls he once escaped through, and eliminating more soldiers as he goes. He finds Aiden in one of the cells, and goes to free him, but as he does, the door slides closed behind him. He turns around just in time to see Olivia, who tells him she is sorry. Gas then floods the room, while Crane bangs desperately on the glass. As he falls to the ground, Olivia comes in, and uses the extractor on him, taking 2 samples of his blood. She leaves the room as Crane passes out. When he comes around again, he is restrained and sitting at the Baron's table. Aiden, the sheriff, Lydia, Camillo, and Spike are all there in similar restraints, all having been gassed and captured like Crane. As Crane wonders how the Baron is always a step ahead of them, the Baron walks in, flanked by Olivia. He makes her take a seat while he explains that they are all there to help him celebrate, as they all played a part in bringing his vision to life. Crane was one of the first human volatile hybrids ever captured, and the Baron spent years researching his mutated DNA, but the last tests needed to be conducted in the wild, so he allowed Crane to escape. The Baron took advantage of Crane's desire for revenge, orchestrating his confrontations with the chimeras and the use of the GSB, with Olivia playing her part in guiding Crane's actions. Now, the Baron has all the data he needs, mutant infected that he can control, and from Crane and Aiden, human DNA capable of resisting the most virulent of infections. The Baron says that each of those at the table contributed in their own way. Spike, through his attempt to rescue Crane, inadvertently delivered Aiden to the Baron. But now, the Baron has no more use for Spike, so cuts his throat. The Baron goes to cut Camillo's throat next for his betrayal, and Lydia is able to stop him temporarily by using her powers and causing him pain. But he knocks her out and then stabs Camillo through the throat. He goes for Lydia next, and Olivia begs him to stop. The Baron tells Olivia that she needs to prove that he can trust her, and so hands her his gun, ordering her to put Crane down. Olivia turns the gun on the Baron instead, apologizing to Crane and telling him that her father had been bitten, and the Baron wouldn't help him unless she did as he said. Olivia pulls the trigger but nothing happens, the Baron having given her an unloaded gun as a test. He tells her that he is disappointed in her and picks up the knife. Lydia uses her powers again, distracting the Baron long enough for Olivia to stab him in the eye. As the Baron reels back in pain, Olivia moves around the table, freeing first Lydia and Crane. The Baron injects himself with something before fleeing the room. Lydia frees Aiden, who takes down the Baron's men. Together, Aiden and Crane then go after the Baron, promising to avenge Spike. The two make it to the roof just in time to see a helicopter arriving for the Baron. They fire at the helicopter, preventing it from landing, and causing it to retreat for now. Aiden and Crane then fight as one against the Baron and his men. After the Baron's soldiers have been eliminated, the Baron calls upon his pet virals. Lydia joins the effort telepathically by taking control of the infected, after Crane or Aiden weaken them enough, turning pets against their master. Not long after this though, the Baron's men go after Lydia, and she calls for help. Crane tells Aiden to help Lydia, while he handles the Baron. Aiden agrees, and Crane is left to deal with the Baron and his pets alone. Just when it looks like Crane has finally gotten the best of the Baron tells him that he is to witness the culmination of his work, the creation of a new species, engineered to dominate not just the virus, but humanity itself. The Baron then injects himself and mutates, becoming a sentient chimera, and one far stronger and more difficult to kill than any that Crane had faced before. The two fight, wearing each other down to the last of their strength, with the Baron resorting to injecting himself with more doses of the substance. He knocks Crane down, and Crane has flashbacks of the experiments, and Spike's and Camillo's deaths, as he hears Olivia asking him what he would sacrifice to stop the Baron. Crane rallies the last of his strength and forces the Baron back towards the edge of the roof, before kicking him through the railing, down onto the rocks below. He takes part of the damaged rail and uses it to impale the Baron, finally getting his revenge. He drags himself back up to the roof and radios Olivia, letting her know that the Baron is gone. As they talk, the helicopter returns, and Crane's GRE handler speaks to him through the radio, saying it's good to hear his voice. She tells him that the GRE had to go underground, but they have always been there, and the Baron was one of theirs, until he wasn't. She also tells Crane that, as usual, he has proven an exceptional ally, and to enjoy his freedom as he has earned it. The helicopter turns away, leaving Crane with a new focus for his revenge. As the helicopter leaves, Crane is joined by Lydia and Aiden, the three watching the GRE helicopter fly into the sunset. And that is the end of the story for now, though one which sets up a future installment. Hopefully we see Crane, Aiden, and Lydia taking the fight to the GRE once and for all. Maybe next time around we'll have a choice of protagonist, and while it would be great to have the option of playing as either Aiden or Crane, personally, I hope we also get the option to play as Lydia and open up a whole world of possibilities, which come with being able to control the infected, and maybe even people, in time. I also think we're going to see more characters like Crane and Aiden in the future. The Baron referring to Crane as one of the first human volatile hybrids to be captured suggests that when we do find the GRE, we may find that they have captured, recruited, or created people just like Crane. We may also find out what those long-term side effects of the GSB mentioned by Olivia might be. But what do you think the next installment has in store? And if you did get the choice of protagonist, who would you choose to be? Crane, Aiden, Lydia, or someone else entirely? Let me know in the comments below. Either way, I'll see you in the next one. And until then, as always, good night and good luck.